Going to turn off microphones and speakers. Okay, I believe we are ready to start.
Okey doke. So I would like to call to order the August 10th, 2020 work session for the Tipp City School Board, and we will all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dave. Attendance whenever you're ready.
President Dunaway,
Here.
Vice President Dahl,
Here.
Mrs. Heatherly,
Here.
Mrs. Patrick, Mr. Patrick, please forgive me,
Here.
and Mrs. Zakor.
Here.
All present accounted for this evening. We have a quorum. Thank you.
Okay, great. So the board is going to adjourn to executive session for purposes authorized under Board of Education Policy 0166 and ORC 121.22, G1, G2 through G6, 8, to consider a complaint against a public employee or official. We don't anticipate any action. And the board would also like to invite Mr. Stevens into the executive session. And we're going to go into Mr. Stefanik's office, if that's okay.
Are we only, we're not going to call in?
No, we'll just start, see what happens.
Okay.
If we need to, we can always,
Okay. Do we need a first and second?
I'll move.
I'll second. Moved and seconded by Dahl and Dunaway.
Okay. Dahl,
Yes.
Dunaway,
Yes.
Heatherly,
Yes.
Patrick,
Yes.
Zakor.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, great. Hopefully this will be really quick.
Okay. And we are back.
Okay, we will start with our discussion items. Is that you, Mr.?
We have to be declared back
Oh,
into
sorry.
regular session at 6:33. And you did invite Mr. Stefanik and Mr. Bureau to come in. So just note those things.
Okay. So the board is back from executive session. It is 6:34. And we did invite Mr. Stefanik and Mr. Verhoff into executive session. And as stated earlier, there was no action taken. So are we good?
Mhm.
Okay. Mr. Stefanik, are you doing the discussion items or are you doing them, Dave, or is Mr. Verhoff?
I'll do the first one,
Okay, sure.
and then we'll have guests for
All right.
the second one. We have some guests for the first one, but they're not
There you
part of
go.
the presentation.
Who's going first? Who's going first?
I'll go in sequential order, so it'll be Janice.
Go ahead.
We both come in. Go right in front and center. Well, is that a problem if we're standing right in front of the camera? Probably is. All right, so I'll just side there. It is with great pleasure that I present to you Janice Cooper Harrison. Janice is, we found Janice in Xenia, and she comes to us with a long background in language arts instruction. And she has some, we'll call it quasi-administrative experience as being a dean of students. Districts use dean of students in various ways, but I had a dean of students for 7 years, and that's an assistant principal. They do a lot of the same functions with administrative oversight from the principal in the building, and they're given any task from curriculum development to, in Janice's case, attendance, monitoring and attendance policy, and of course, as every assistant principal position or quasi-assistant principal position has, discipline. You have that piece as well. So we were excited about Janice's more than a decade experience in language arts leadership, and we were pleased that she's got front office administrative experience to add on top of that. So we think she'll be a great addition to the Tipp Middle School staff, and came highly recommended by the building-based interview team. So Janice.
Thank you. First of all, Board of Education, Tipp City, thank you for inviting me here. I'm excited, ready to get started. That was one question that the superintendent asked me, what are your fears? I said, no, I don't have a fear. I'm excited. I'm ready to go. I come to you from Xenia. I have 18 years altogether of education experience. I grew up in Cedarville, Ohio. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. Farm girl as well. So then I got a basketball scholarship to Central State University, where I played 4 years for the Lady Marauders and got my BS in education. I have 2 masters, one in reading curriculum instruction, and the other is in education administration. Like he said, I've been the dean for 2 years, and then I did a great job and things happened and our superintendent needed change. And so I was the low man on the totem pole and had to go back into the classroom where I was a 7th grade ELA teacher, and that's where I have been. But I enjoy doing it. I cannot wait to get started. I'm here for the students and student achievement, and assist Mr. Principal Southers in anything that he needs me to do. And I just want to thank my family for supporting me in this decision, because I have a daughter who is in junior high. And when I told her it was Tipp, she's like, oh, Mom, I'm going to get it at school. So she supports me, but I thank my family, my husband, for being here with me today. And I'm just ready to get started. And I appreciate your staff, as like the new assistant high school principal stated, just perfect and friendly and very helpful, especially Kim, because she really helped me out through this whole situation and getting on things and getting the invite for the Zoom interview. So the whole staff, the interview staff, they were very welcoming, and I'm once again very excited.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
When you were you said you were at Xenia Middle School?
Yes.
So my father-in-law taught there, I think towards the end of his career. Do you remember Bruce Dahl? By any chance?
no.
He taught computers.
No. No,
That's okay.
no, because I was, it's Warner Middle School.
Oh, okay.
And so they had two different middle schools, Central and
Right.
Warner. And so now they combined it into one. So now it's Warner Middle School. So that's where I'm at. Yes, ma'am.
Were you neighbors with Governor DeWine?
I went to school with his daughters and, yes. And my,
We're connected.
okay. Yes, I always say that's my homie right there. Governor DeWine. So yes, I went to school with his daughters. Mhm.
Oh, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate you all. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have a second introduction. You want Amanda or Amy?
Amy, please.
Okay, this is Amy Epperson, and we found Amy in Miamisburg. I had to go over as a newcomer to this area. I know the Miamisburg Centerville Road, and so I had to go and ask her if it was the Miamisburg School District or the Centerville School District. She said they're two different school districts. I said, okay, it's the same road that I travel quite often down there. She comes again, a long-time language arts teacher.
Spanish.
Oh, so sorry, two different languages.
Yes,
Different language with Spanish.
World language.
That's right. Yeah. So a longtime language teacher, but involved in teacher-based teams and school improvement teams with curriculum. So a strong curricular background and a lot of teacher leadership positions in the district. So again, well over a decade worth of experience in education. We're excited about the instructional piece that Amy brings to the table. And I think she'll fit in great at Tippecanoe High School. So welcome, Amy.
Hello. Like Janice said, I am just beyond thrilled to be here. We were talking while we were waiting, just how genuinely friendly everyone has been. From the time I applied for the job, have heard wonderful things about the student body and the staff at the high school as well. And everybody that I have met has delivered on that reputation. So I'm ecstatic for this opportunity. Mr. Zink has been very helpful to me, and Marilyn as well gave me a tour of the building today and kind of helped me out with some things. So I'm really, really excited. As was said, I have 23 years of serving and supporting high school students, 2 at a private school and then 21 at Miamisburg. So I was there for a long time, and I was really looking for my second home, and I feel confident that this is going to be a place that I'm going to be happy and be able to work with everyone here in the room to really support our students and help them to be successful, not only right now while they're students in our district, but also to set them up for success after school, after they've graduated from Tipp. So I'm just ecstatic, absolutely thrilled to be here. So.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Glad you're both here. Absolutely.
Any questions or comments from the board for our two new team members?
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having us. Yeah. So
Good luck with everything.
Thank you.
Transition. We're going to test you and see if you recognize it from our mask.
She's never gonna see you without your mask. This is forever now.
Anyways, eventually.
Sorry about that with the language to Spanish, but had a lot of
That's the second
resumes.
assistant principal that was a Spanish teacher, because that was what Mrs. Firstafon was.
Spanish teachers know how to do the transition from the classroom into administration.
Next on the agenda.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, new creations. This is, new creations discussion. I didn't know if that was Mr. Stefanik or Mr. Verhoff or a combination.
I can introduce our folks from New Creations.
Sure.
And let me see how do we do this with numbers?
10 people in the room at a time. So there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10. So one person also.
Steve's gotta go away.
No, I'm good. One person also. Yes.
Just stand at home.
I mean, if you guys are doing a presentation, I could go just outside the doorway.
There you go. That'll work.
Do that too. I can just slide back and you guys could come in.
All right.
That works.
At the last board meeting, there were some questions that about the partnership agreement for mental health services. And we thought that the best way to address those questions and to give a general overview of the program was to bring in the new creation staff and some of the high school counselors that work closely with them. And so either from the new creations perspective or from the high school counselors perspective, we hope we can get all your questions answered. So once she makes her way back to the front, the lead presenter is Becky Gruber from New Creations. We also have Christine Schmidt and Ann Toohey here from the high school to help out with the presentation. And middle school, and Mr. Zink if he needs to answer any questions about services as well.
I want to thank you very much for the opportunity to be able to speak to you, answer your questions so that we can continue to partner and meet Tipp City students' mental health needs. So had a chance to look over the information that I sent you concerning some of the questions that you presented from the last meeting. I guess that would be a good place to start in clarifying any information that you may have about that, those questions that you have.
One second, I'm trying to pull mine up. Sorry.
You have a hard copy in your folder too.
Of my questions or?
The questions that the board
Yes.
came up with, yes.
And where would that be? Which piece is that?
On the left-hand side.
On the left hand? Got it. Thank you.
Becky, while they're reviewing that, do you want to go through not that anything is 100% typical, but would you go through how you guys get recommendations to become involved with a student case? Does it typically come from the counselors in the school district, or are there other ways that students get referred to you?
This is very much a partnership, and we work closely with the administration and the staff to meet student needs. If it's okay, I'm going to pass that question on to our school counselors, because that's really where the process starts before it comes to us.
So there are 3 counselors at the high school level. We're the only building that has multiple counselors. So basically when a student comes to us and right off the bat, if it's something that we feel is something that kind of goes in the gamut of mental health, meaning anxiety, depression, we talk to the student about seeing an outside counselor, just because we are not trained in mental health and mental therapy. So we talk to the student about those options. If the student doesn't buy into it, then it's not going to be an appropriate fit. So right off the bat, we talk to the student about possibly meeting with either Becky or one of the other mental health therapists that will be in our building, and kind of talk to them about what that looks like. There is by no means any commitment. They can do kind of a consultation or just one appointment if that's something that they feel appropriate. If the student buys into the idea or is even questioning the idea, then we go ahead and get parents involved. It depends on the severity of the issue, of course. If it's something that the student is coming to us in crisis, that is something that we get the parents involved right away. If it's something that this is a student that is frequently coming to us with notions of anxiety or depression, then we start talking about, let's try to see if an outside agency, if a mental health therapist, if that's something that would help you. Getting the parents involved is crucial. They are part of the intake paperwork. Once we let the parents know that this is something that we have recommended and that their student is on board for, then the student completes a assessment, and then the parent also has to fill out paperwork. From that, then that's when it kind of gets handed over to New Creation. And from there, they have someone who puts them on the schedule as to when they can meet with them. And then I, at the high school, I determine when's the best time that a student can meet with a therapist so they're not being pulled from an academic class.
I'm sorry, are you Ms. Tui?
I'm Mrs. Schmidt. I'm
You're
at the high
Mrs. Schmidt,
school.
and then you're Mrs. Tui, okay.
May I ask you, Mrs. Smith, when you said you're not trained in mental health, maybe I'm misunderstanding the role of counselors, because I thought that was one of the areas of student counseling.
No, and I have an article from actually the American School Counselor Association. I brought enough for everyone that kind of talks about.
That's the article I have from the American School Counselor saying appropriate duties include providing short-term counseling. to
Short
students.
term.
Absolutely. That is absolutely one of our roles,
Yes.
but
But isn't this also short-term in creation, six sessions at the most? And 30 days?
No, that is very individualized based on the student's needs. So once paperwork is completed by the parent, that is ongoing. For example, I've started with students in the fall. And for some of those students, I'm continuing to see them when school was not in session and now even into the summer to provide that consistency and that continuity for mental health services. So the timeline for services is very individualized based on a student's need.
So what do you consider short-term? That just surprises me.
so students are usually like where a staff member, a parent, or another student will come. They'll come to a counselor or an individual student with a litany of issues, either school-related, home-related, friendship-related, all kinds of things. And then we're kind of like triage. We know what we can handle. What's our scope of practice? What do we, as school counselors, what have we been trained for? And do I have mental health training? Absolutely, absolutely. But there are also things that kids are dealing with that are beyond my scope of practice, that I, as a counselor, know this is deep. This is self-harm. This is deep depression. This is grief that is turning into some, dangerous behaviors for kids. And I know that that is beyond my scope of practice. And so that's when, as she was saying, we refer out to either outside mental health services. We work with the parent. We have a list of providers, actually Dayton Children's. We did a lot of work beforehand, and then Dayton Children's has kind of stepped in and they have an online resource for parents. So I usually.
It doesn't really answer my question. What is considered short-term counseling?
If you look at the article, like one of the examples is grief. So if a student has a parent or grandparent passed away, obviously as the school counselor, we are going to step in. We are going to make sure that the student is okay, that they can learn, and that if there's any barriers that we can take down for them while they are there in the academic setting. However, that is normal to grieve the loss of a family member. But when we notice that it is becoming an issue of anxiety, of deep depression, then that grief has turned into something else that's more of a mental illness. And then that is something that we cannot, from what our training is, we cannot provide any kind of therapy to that student. We are just providing counseling to help them make sure that any barrier to their academic success is met. So I think even in the article it references grief is something that we can work on, but not an extended amount of grief where it turns into kind of that depression or anything like that.
Or unhealthy behaviors or unhealthy, in my eyes, short-term counseling or short-term mental health counseling is anywhere from one session because I'm raising the fire alarm and I know I need to call a parent. And we gotta have a conversation. We gotta figure out what's next for your son or daughter. Or I'm gonna talk to this kid and then I'm gonna get like maybe 2 or 3 sessions with a kid and then I'm like, I still need to sound the alarm. I need parents and I need that support.
It's variable based on the situation.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I think I can speak both personally and professionally to the question that you have. I have 24 years of experience as a school counselor, so I know what their role is. I've lived it. And the difference between what they do and what I am currently doing as a mental health therapist is it's on a continuum of intensity. You meet with the student, you triage, you see what their needs are, you work to meet their needs, but there are so many other things that school counselors are doing that it's difficult in a day to be able to spend individual time over a long period of time to meet those needs. So that's where the mental health therapist comes in. We're providing individual therapy. The therapy is a little bit more intensive and more focused clinically on mental health needs that school counselors just aren't able to provide. It's not that they don't want to meet all of their students' needs. It's just not really possible with all of the other demands that they have going. And so that's why this program is so important, because we can step in and we can address those needs in a way that does make a difference. Does that help
Do
to
you have
answer?
metrics on that, Mrs. Gruber? Like, do you have measures and scales that, in other words, how do you assess the outcome of your stepping in and helping these kids? Where,
You're asking
because I
some
know
great
it's
questions.
a big issue in the
Yes.
psychological, psychiatric profession.
Absolutely.
You know, we can go through all these, but then it's just like, you know, assessing medications, whether they're effective or not, or dose too high, too low. It's like assessing student grades. So what are your assessors that you use on these, what, about 60, 50 kids? Was that?
Yes. This past year.
Yeah.
That was up until March
Okay,
16th.
right.
But again, you asked a great question. I know in education, you're constantly progress monitoring to make sure that students are making growth. And we want to make sure that we are making a positive difference in the students that we work with. So there are several tools that we use. We have, and I think it is in your packet, an example. It was stapled with the intake, an example of the intake questionnaire. But it is a anxiety and depression screener that we have kids answer, and then they answer that about once every 30 days, and then we track that. The other that we are doing on a regular basis when they take these screeners to update and to see where they are in their progress is a student survey. We ask the students, are we meeting your needs? Is this helping? And I know what I do with that is I take that information, I use that to ask students questions. Well, if I'm not meeting your needs, what more do you need? Or what would you find to be more helpful? I will say in tracking this information this past year that we did get positive results on both of those screeners. Overall, by tracking our kids through the anxiety and the depression scales, along with their satisfaction survey, they were all positive ratings. So that tells us overall, our program is being successful. We are meeting the needs of the students that we're working with. And that's the bottom line for us.
So I would guess that you would have a professional treatment plan that has some goals with
Oh, yes.
outcomes that you're trying to measure. That
Absolutely.
might also include, like you're saying, some self-surveys, but there may be referrals to other therapists, to other entities.
Yes,
There may be medication management and other professional positions that might come into the play, right?
absolutely.
So
This is a team effort.
yeah,
And we're going to make sure that a student gets all that they need to make that positive difference. New Creation does have psychiatric services. Therefore, if it is determined that it could be a benefit, then we contact the parent, we talk to the parent about the possibility of exploring medical intervention. And then we assist in getting the student an appointment with our psychiatrist. So parent is
treatment
involved.
programs, there's all kinds of treatment programs out there that you might refer to.
Absolutely. That we call those adjunct services. But definitely anything that's going to be supportive of the student and sometimes even supportive of the family. It just depends on what their needs are.
So after 30 days, because if I understood the contract correctly, it's within that 30-day scope, correct?
That's a clause, but most students do not fall into that situation. And that came not from New Creations guidelines, that's on the Ohio Revised Code. So that came from the legislature, saying that students 14 through 17 could see a counselor for 30 days or up to 6 sessions without parental permission. So most of the time, again, in our results, that did not happen in Tipp City schools. The procedure that we tend to follow is they see a need, the school counselors, and they're probably already in communication with parents, whether it's behavior, attendance, grades, anything like that. The school counselors are probably, they're aware of their students. And so they talk with the student. If the student's interested, they refer them to the parent and have that conversation before it really gets to us. And that's how the referral is made most of the time. So it's
At what point in the dialogue is the student informed that they do not have to inform their parent?
that is a question at the beginning of the process. But I think what we've seen is most students, all students, well, we've had one that was not interested, that student did not continue services. That's all I can say on that situation.
I can just say whenever a student walks into my office and says, I need to talk to you, I start with my confidentiality statement, as I know the other counselors do, that you're coming to talk to me, and I'm so glad that you're here, but I need to let you know that while we're in here, if you talk about anything that if someone is harming you, you are harming yourself, or you have a plan or intent to harm others, I'm going to have to inform your parents as well as any appropriate administrative or referral source. And they know that. So right off the bat, students are made aware that whatever they're coming to talk to me about, yes, is confidential. Like if they're just coming to tell me that they failed, their chemistry test and they're scared to tell their parent or whatever it may be, or they're coming to tell me something a little bit deeper than that, they are made aware that I'm going to have to contact their parent. When I bring up the idea of, even before we had New Creation, when I would have the list of there is outside help, there are people that can help you, but this is a support team. I'm just part of that team, and so is your parent. And I really encourage that student to get, to be part of the process of telling their
Mrs.
parent.
Smith, what I'm asking is not, I understand there's that category of harm, self-harm, inflicting harm,
Sure.
thoughts of harm. But if you take that category away, and all the other categories, whether it be depression, body dysmorphic, ideations, whether it be anorexia, anxiety, and you have a 14 or 15-year-old sitting there, are you obliged to say that the law allows you to have these sessions without your parents being informed? Do you bring that dialogue in at any point in time?
I do not. I tell them that that the parent is part of the process, and then if the parent does not complete the paperwork, then they can continue to see the counselor until those 6 sessions come in or the 30 days. I don't ever come out right and tell a student, and your parent doesn't have to know. That is not something that I would ever, and I know none of the other counselors would ever promote.
Because I'm just trying to, be communicative with you from all perspectives. I'm a big supporter of mental health services. I've been through it as a family. I've been through it as an individual. I'm a registered nurse. In the right hands, by the way, because that's another topic. What I'm trying to say is when we're spending $53,000 or $56,000 of the community's money, and the program for that expense entails sort of a secrecy component, if you will, and I'm not blaming any of you, it was legislated in Ohio, 14 to 17 years of age, that they can access this without their parents' knowledge, and yet their parents are the ones that are paying for this program. I'm just trying to understand how.
Well, first of all, and Mr. Stevens, you can correct if I'm speaking out of turn, but money that there's money coming from the state the student wellness program. It's under House Bill 166. And that money, I think Tipp as a district is getting over $100,000, can be spent on mental wellness. So this is not taxpayer money, this is state money.
Didn't know that.
Well, state money is
Well,
taxpayer.
taxpayer saying this is not just Tipp City
Right.
money.
It's not local taxpayer money
It's not-
collected
okay,
from property
that's
taxes.
new information.
Yeah. Second of all, you're right, there should be no secrecy, and I can't control, just like you said, you're not blaming us, it's the
No.
state of Ohio, but we can control what happens in Tipp City, and I can tell you the 6 counselors that work for Tipp City don't have secrets with parents. So they are informed, every parent is informed if we think their student needs some kind of outside service.
Okay.
Every administrator is informed. So there is, like I said, I can't speak for another district, I can't speak for the state of Ohio, but I can speak for the 5 other people that work with me. We're all on the same page that parents are a part of our team. My kids might be younger than 4, but I am a parent. I wouldn't want a secret from me either. So I can say that there are no secrets. We want everyone to be part of that team to have that
Yeah,
student.
that secrecy was a big hook for me, so I'm sure to hear that, because I just don't support that at all.
We very much need parental support in this process. And it is when we all work together that the student benefits the most. And we are all a team. And so we are committed to that. And we, I think, go out of our way to make that happen. And we also are continuing to try to figure out new and better ways to communicate with parents and to make them more a part of that process. So yes, we value that very much.
I just want to share on my end, some of the ways that the referrals kind of gone is in conversations with parents. They're at that point of, I need help. I'm having difficulties with my son or daughter. I'm not sure, where to go from here. And so I've had that dialogue with them of, well, we have opportunities here. Do you think perhaps this may be something you're interested in? So at the times that I've been involved with it, oftentimes it's been parent first. And then from there, it's, let me talk with my son or daughter and get back to you. And we've had, situations where they decided to proceed. They also appreciate the fact that, maybe they've got 3 or 4 kids at home. You don't have to then lug somebody off somewhere. We've got that, it's in the building. But I can also tell you, I've used it in the moment when I have a student that is in crisis that somehow has come to me for a situation. And then I recognize, hey, I need to make sure that we're providing all the tools. I don't want to miss something and then find out later that something bad has happened. And so, I kind of look at, I know what tools I have, coping mechanisms and whatnot. But at the same time, I want to make sure that we're providing, the services to keep everybody safe. The needs of our students have changed over the years. There are a variety of different factors that play into that. So, for me, knowing that security piece is there gives me comfort to know that our students are being taken care of, because we're looking at them from this killing. Sorry, my mask is falling all over. We want to take care, obviously, the academic component, but we need to look at everything else as well, the whole child and everything from there. So I just wanted to share that that's how it's come from my angle a lot of times.
And this service is not required by law, or are school districts required to provide psychological counseling to your knowledge? I couldn't find that, but then I didn't know.
To my knowledge, that's a no, but a lot of districts are recognizing that additional
They're
need that
offering that
exists
or
and want
supplementing.
to do that in order to make sure that we're doing everything we can to provide, a stable environment for our students.
And I believe I read something recently that said that the state is looking to make it mandatory that
I thought I
schools,
read that too.
schools partner with a health service organization to provide
They
services.
were moving in that direction,
believe
or
so,
it's
yes.
mandatory.
Because we said we were happy that we got ahead of the curve.
Correct.
Because I remember this coming up very.
He signed the bill when the governor took office and then allocated the money. So we're already recognizing our counselors, our school counselors, no longer guidance counselors,
Yeah, we're
school
no longer-
counselors.
Titles matter.
We're coming to us already saying, our teachers, all our staff, we recognize that we do not have the tools for some of the issues that are coming, and we need to partner with another agency. And I think that you all did an awesome job of defending that need to our board.
I will say too that, and I think this goes across the board, Christine will agree with me, that we don't just say, this is your only option. When we talk to parents, we talk about, there is like outside counseling but the problem that we're running into with a lot of parents is scheduling is 1 month, 2 months, 3 months out, and their kid needs help now. Like, they cannot get into anyone because some of these, there's just not enough mental health therapists in the area. So I feel very lucky that the district secured that last year and made it a priority. And
I just want to thank Ms. Schmidt. I think your answers were what Ann was really looking for. That was the piece that was missing. So thank you for giving her that piece of security, especially where the parent trust issue is concerned. And then I appreciate this article of the American School Counselor Association. I'm assuming this is a national organization. Okay. And then just for our board members, I'm going to send you the ODE's school counselor standards, which are a little bit more specific that will answer, again, some of your questions that you had as far as the ODE's roles for school counselors and what they're going to, and they have a broad task. It's a lot of work that they're tasked with in our buildings.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I just wanted to speak to the,
Go ahead.
I want to speak to the mandate question. And sometimes things don't get to the mandate level, but when the state starts putting grant money out there, they're setting a priority, that there's a priority of need for these types of services. And so they put extra money out there to help school districts provide those services to students.
How does this work in conjunction with Hope Squad? Because that's new to us. So can you explain a little bit just that relationship since we're all in the same room?
Hope Squad, when we signed that contract, we basically also agreed that we would be partnering with a mental health agency. Hope Squad is contingent on new creation and our partnership. So we have to have a mental health agency in order to keep that organization going.
Do they help train your Hope Squad people? Is that why?
This year we did have our Tri-County board come in. Unfortunately, Hope Squad didn't start till second semester, which was January. Yeah, because we had the contract, the way that the Hope Squad said we had to start based on our training. And so then by the time we were trained in ASQ and things of that nature, and QPR, then we weren't able to utilize, but it was planned that Becky would come up and talk to our Hope Squad, talk about what our partnership does. And that was a piece that we were looking to do. And next year, Hope Squad will be a full year course.
Just get right out of that. Yeah, it's a class this year.
Yep.
So these records that are generated because of the students' involvement and interaction with the program, just with, how do I say this? They're kept in a separate box, if you will, that's a separate entity. Does that fall under HIPAA, or how do you protect the students? In other words, that doesn't become a student record, does it? Isn't that a FERPA exception?
The referrals that come to us, and then the intake packet that the parent fills out is covered by HIPAA.
Okay.
Yes.
And then the referral part that the counselors do, because you're the gatekeepers, where does that fall in the scheme of paper trails?
That, the part that the intake paperwork is all completed online, so that's something that they take hold of. I just take note that I referred, I take note of when I contacted the parent, what the response was, what the student response was, when I kind of just trail like what I have done as part of it. Once they've done the intake paperwork, that goes into new creation. Obviously, we keep in touch as far as if it's one of our students, because new creation was only in our building 2 days a week. So, if something happens to that student on one of the days they're not there, we need to be kind of kept in the loop as far as what's a coping technique you've worked with them, a strategy, things of that nature. But as far as, no, it's not part of their educational record.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
And the referral form is done with initials only. We try to really minimize any identifiable information with that form as it initially starts the process.
So Mrs. Schmidt, when you say they do the paperwork online, is that through their portal? Okay, great, thank you.
Well, I thought this was a great discussion. I really appreciate you coming. Thank you all for your input.
Yeah, you've asked some great questions, and again, we are committed to providing excellent quality mental health services for the students in Tipp, regardless of their ability to pay, and that's what's been so awesome. I think parents have really appreciated it because they don't have to take off work to take their child to another appointment, and they know that they are going to be getting consistent and efficient and effective mental health services on a regular basis. So it's been so exciting to be a part of this process and really see students grow from that. So that's the part that's always exciting to be able to share. I can see firsthand that it is truly making a difference with the students that we're working with.
So their involvement in the program can exceed 6 times, is that correct?
Absolutely.
As long
That
as
was
parent
just-
paperwork is completed, as long as the parent paperwork is completed.
And that's under the contract with our district.
So
See, I misunderstood that. I didn't realize that. When I looked at the contract, to me, it was saying you have a 30-day window, and within that 30-day window, you can have up to 6 sessions.
it is just in that situation where a student says, no, I do not want you to contact my parent. They have the right by Ohio Revised Code to be able to be seen by a counselor,
Okay.
any counselor, for that period of time. Most of our situations do not work that way though. So once parents are informed, we are communicating with them in multiple ways and wanting them to fill out paperwork, because once the paperwork's filled out, we can start providing those services beyond those 30 days. And with students, it's all individualized. We may see a student once a week. We may see a student every other week, once a month, check in. It's just based on what they need. But again, we can be consistent with those services once we get started, however long that they are in need of them.
Your resume was very impressive, by the way, so
Oh.
what a blessing you are, and obviously passionate and very good at what you do. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I am so honored to be able to take my experience in schools, because this is my 36th year in schools, and the school counselors know I'm real comfortable walking the halls. I like the noise and the activity and the chatter and whatnot. There's a real energy in being in school. So this truly meshes my 2 passions in working with students and mental health. So thank you.
Anne, are you good? Your questions been answered? Okay.
Pretty much. I mean, I can go on forever. I know it's not.
Hands with an E can.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
Greatly appreciate your time.
Thank
And
you so
if you have any other questions, please always feel free to give me a call. I want to be able to be available for you so that we can continue to partner. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, restart plan, Mr. Stefanik, I'll go ahead and do it. So I think we all just take a drink of water, so when you're ready, no rush.
And Dave, you said you can pull that up for the audience. At our last regular meeting, 2 weeks ago, there was a conversation about the beginnings of Tipp City's responsible restart plan. It was a general framework, and we said that we would bring together staff members and administration to serve on task forces and actually get into specialty areas. For example, health and wellness. Our nurses came together and helped us on that task force. Cleaning, we had maintenance and custodial involved in that task force. Of course, lunch, we had food service managers in those task forces. And so we were trying to get people that were in these particular departments or school levels to address some of the needs as we move forward with the restart plan. I know that there's been some anxiety that some parents' questions haven't been answered, but we wanted to make sure that the task force has had a chance to, really address some of these areas so we could put together a more comprehensive plan. When you see the plan tonight, you'll see that there's a lot more detail in operations, but there are still some questions that will be left unanswered because after we get to this level of the framework plan, then we hand it over to principals and building staff members in order to make it work inside their specific levels of the educational sequence. I'm going to try not to read this document, verbatim for 9 pages, but I'm going to give some highlights. And if you feel like you need more specifics, please feel free to ask questions. We start off with the introduction. We had that in our general framework. And basically what the introduction says is that we're going to work to create the safest learning environment that we can as we're addressing the COVID-19 pandemic. We have utilized guidance from the Ohio Department of Health, the Miami County Public Health, the Ohio Department of Education, and we're always monitoring any mandates that come out of either the state health department or the governor's office as we move forward with the plan. Guiding principles, as I said the last time, the Miami County superintendents have been meeting since late May, early June to try to come up with just some common guiding principles that are countywide. And again, implement the safety protocols to the highest degree possible, work closely with the health department. That is key. Many people in the education realm are not health experts and they're not medically trained staff. And so we have to work with the health department to find out what the next step forward is if we run into a health situation. Little side note off the plan, we ran into that situation yesterday. And as I mentioned today in an interview I participated in, schools are typically closed on Sundays. Health departments are typically closed on Sundays. It was minutes after we asked for assistance from the Miami County Public Health that we received a return call. They had multiple people on the phone with various school people to address the situation. And inside of a couple of hours, we had a recommendation about quarantine groups and notifications out to families. So it was an excellent partnership under not so pleasant circumstances because we don't want anybody to be ill or to be testing positive. But once they do, if we can have the health support network around that situation as fast as possible, that's great for everybody. Instructional models. We have 2 options for families as we begin to address the beginning of the 2021 school year. The first one is a 5-day in-person instruction model with the governor's mandate. There will be masks for all students and all staff, K through 12. We have some things we're addressing, especially at the 2 primary buildings. We're looking at air circulation, and we had a couple of questions through email, and my response was, we have found that we can utilize fans because there is something, a school of research out there, medical recommendations that says that fans actually start moving the droplets around and they could be a problem. But as we checked into it, they said that you have to make sure that the fans are used for air circulation and they're not blowing the air directly at people as much as you can. So the positioning of fans to, get the air moving, around the room rather than blowing directly into someone's, space. And so it's about positioning of fans. And so I put out there, fans with some restrictions, was my first answer, and that's the restriction. You can't have it sitting right in front of somebody's desk and blowing directly at them, because then, you know, you're actually magnifying the movement of the droplets, and it could actually be a health problem. So things like that are being addressed for the in-person model. Some other things we will put in a little bit later. Some other things to consider, possibly one-way hallways, and so that there's not, you know, a face-to-face passing, you know, going on in hallways, you know, that could be considered. Different dismissal schedules from classrooms to minimize the number of students in the classroom or cut it down. That's something that could be considered. But when we do in person, what we hear from our health department is the true focus is on your hands. You know, the mask, you know, takes care of, you know, trying to cut down on the spread, but keeping your hands clean after you touch some things, making sure that if you can't wash, you're using hand sanitizer, because as you retouch surfaces, you don't want to be adding to the situation. And even with my mask, and you saw it with Mr. Zink as well, sometimes when we're talking and our chin's pulling it down, you know, it comes off your nose and you start messing with your mask. Well, the more times you have washed your hands, you're cutting down the chance that you're actually going to bring something, you know, into your face area that's going to cause you, you know, to pass the germ, for lack of a better term. And so that's something that we're going to address. Hand sanitizer stations, a lot of discussion amongst teachers in their classes about, you know, when you go to the bathroom, proper hand washing techniques, and possibly increasing the trips, you know, for hand washing during the day. The second option for parents is full-time online instruction, and this is the item that possibly is creating the most anxiety in our community. Part of that is that Tipp City does not have a history of offering an online option to parents. There are some school districts that have been offering an online option to anyone in their school district, K to 12, for possibly a decade or longer. It just hasn't been the culture here. And so folks are trying to understand exactly what it is. And what it's not, it is not remote learning from the Tipp City teachers. That is not what this online option is. Online schools, what they do is they have a standards-based program that is already sequenced in a lesson format, but for many of them, they service at least regions of the country. If not, they look for a customer base throughout the entire country. So with that being said, when you're talking about the expanse of the country, time zones, things like that, most of your lessons, if not all your lessons, are going to be in the taped format, or they're not going to be live instruction. You will get support. You will have a teacher of record. And yes, the teachers in the program are certified teachers. You know, we've heard some people say like, well, they're not even certified teachers. No, they're not certified Tipp City teachers, but they are certified teachers in the program. This particular program, Schools PLP, has an extra level of support. They call it a mentor program. And so the mentor may or may not be a certified teacher, but they're an extra added level of support if the child would need, you know, some additional assistance with academics in addition to the teacher that is in that program. Our recommendation was also to put a Tipp City point of contact person, teacher, you know, there for another mentor type person that is local. And then the students could have a local contact that they could get in touch with if they needed it. And if they don't reach out, our point of contact will reach out to them just to make sure that things are going okay.
We have received a lot of emails regarding this point of contact.
Yes.
So just kind of going by memory of some of the questions that we've received, could you kind of explain because right now parents are deciding if they're gonna, I think the date is August 8th or August 9th. They have to decide if they're gonna do this PLP program.
No, 16.
Oh, 16, I'm sorry,
16,
yeah.
yeah.
What was the line? Okay,
That may have been the earliest one.
Okay.
When the re-registration link was having a technical difficulty,
Okay.
we pushed it to the 16th.
We've gotten so many emails, but I just remember seeing that date over and over from many parents. So the window is shortening and they want to make a decision. And one of their questions is, explain to me a little bit more, what does this point of contact look like?
How is it gonna work?
How many kids does it service? How many times are we allowed to call them?
Right, and I can take your questions in reverse order. How many times do you call them? To be determined, as many as you need. What I envision as point of contact being, it's somebody that is a teacher currently in our school district in the grade range that your child is in. So if your child is K through 2 or K through 3, then we'll have one of our K through 2 or K through 3 teachers monitoring that group. They'll have access, the point of contact, to monitor the amount of online time that the student is engaged in and what types of lessons they're completing. It's kind of a mixture in my mind between a guidance counselor and a support staff member. A reading support person like Title I or a math support person. It's an extra person like that, but as the counselor side, they can see by monitoring the student activity online whether student is struggling or whether student is engaged in a positive manner. And so that person will reach out to Johnny or Susie. How are you doing? Things going okay? Do you need some help with something? Or we'll have more I don't want to use self-motivated because there'll be students that will initiate the contact back to the point of contact. So they'll know who the point of contact is, and you'll have Johnny or Susie go, Mrs. Johnson, I need some extra help. But the ones that are quieter than our point of contact will be said, you have to check in with these students. You initiate X number if they're not initiating contact with you.
So will our Tipp City point of contact person, will they have access to like the metrics as far as how often a student logs on, if they've been logging on daily, so that the conversation is centered around their usage in the system? I'm imagining this is not like a tutor, right? This isn't a person they're going to reach out to going, oh, I can't figure out question 3 in the system. This is more like somebody to like you said, more of a guidance role, not a tutor role, because PLP, if I understand it correctly, has teachers that they're going to reach out to for tutoring type situations, right?
Right. I would say more of the guidance piece, but if our Tipp City students find comfort with the point of contact, so let's say it's a 2nd grade teacher and you're a 3rd grade student, and that was your 2nd grade teacher, and they love their year in 2nd grade with that teacher, they might reach out for some academic assistance in addition to whatever the online teachers provide.
So is this Tipp point of contact, is that going to be their only job then?
No.
Yeah, I'm worried about the teachers getting bogged down.
If they're going to get
Right.
tutoring
Yeah.
questions.
Well, but that's,
I'm worried about
what
that.
we have to, again, this is an extra supplemental contract for the
Oh,
teacher.
okay.
And so it's like a coach.
Okay.
And so they'll have time to do things after hours, but they'll have a supplemental contract, in order to compensate them for doing that extra work for the district.
That makes a difference.
Yeah.
But still, we don't want them to get bogged down.
So
Right,
they're
but
gonna
when you
have
look at the
limited
number
hours
that they
then.
would get assigned their head count, we would look at, a head count that would be manageable, inside of, say, like a coaching time slot.
What happens if a student is asking for more assistance that's realistically practical to provide with the POC? What do we do at that point?
Then I think we actually have the POC get in touch with the mentor through school's PLP and look at the overall support structure and what more can be done for the student.
Are they gonna be trained? Does like PLC have a training program for point of contact? Or are they just kind of making up this role as they go?
Well, we're kind of making up the
Okay.
as we go, but schools PLP does have training offerings.
Okay.
And so it'll be the training offering that's offered to parents and then some to our POCs. And so they've been very gracious in offering trainings. And up to that point, public
Well, I just think it's really-
service announcement time,
It's-
Wednesday.
Yeah.
To help parents with the decision, Wednesday at 6 o'clock, we're going to set up a Zoom meeting for representatives from Miami County ESC, Montgomery County ESC, and although we haven't had it confirmed yet, a representative from schools PLP itself leading the Zoom meeting and providing an overview of the program, a demo of the program, and then fielding a Q&A session at the end of that. And so Mr. Veerhoff and I will play, this will date some people, we'll play Merv Griffin and moderate the talk show, but we'll be here just to introduce it as a Tipp City offering, but then we'll hand it off to the folks that have actually vetted, been more highly trained than we have in the schools PLP platform, so they can address parent questions.
So there'll be more than one POC in the district?
Based on the numbers we have so far from our survey, yes,
Okay.
yes. Quite a few, probably with the numbers we have right now, possibly 5 to 6.
Okay.
So again, we're looking at a class size or a little bit bigger of folks on the head count, for the POCs. So they'll have their head count during the school day, and then they might have 20 to 30 students to be the point of contact for their extra duties for the district.
The 5 to 6 on the survey is based on the need or is it based on teachers willing to do it, or a combination of both?
No, right now it's based on we're monitoring the number of people that are responding to the survey that they want to be 100% online. And in our teacher survey, where we had the pie charts a couple of meetings ago, we asked that question and we got a nice response. We got 40 to 45% of our teachers saying that they're willing to help if asked.
Awesome.
So now,
Would there maybe be a way to capture some of these frequently asked questions about PLP within our website?
after Wednesday,
Yes.
oh, most definitely. Yes, we will keep track, and that's kind of what I was saying after Mr. Veerhoff and I introduced the folks. Then our job is to monitor the questions that come in and the answers that are given, and then we can actually take that information and put it right up on our website.
Thank you. So, excuse me, Mr. Stefani, it says that, because PLP, you're right, I'm getting a lot of questions on this as well. It states here, the second sentence of full-time online instruction. The online virtual program will mirror the course offerings and curriculum of Tipp schools.
Yes.
So if a student is taking, let's say, American history in the building, and another student is taking American history online, they should be the same?
Well, not necessarily the same sequence. And I'll just use school districts as a general rule. If someone moves from
Texas to Ohio.
Dayton, Dayton, public schools, and they move to Tipp City, there's no guarantee that the teachers in Dayton are at the exact same place in the curriculum that the teachers are in Tipp City. And so, although they're doing similar content, the sequence of lessons may not be exactly the same.
Or the pace could be different too.
But
different pace.
right. But you're in the range. So if there is a gap, if somebody transfers from the online back to the Tipp City program or vice versa, that the gap is manageable. And so if they're all taking U.S. history, they should be in a similar area. But to say that if whatever happens on Tuesday is exactly the same in school and in the online program, no, we wouldn't be able to guarantee that.
There's academic standards, but we use maybe a different book or
Sure,
curriculum guide, because that's what we do every year about evaluating curriculums.
Part of the design with this is by having our students enroll in this program, we're going to be able to better monitor that curriculum. And so the transition when they come back to us, because that's ultimately the goal, is a little less, it's a little more seamless than what it would be if they went to another school or another online platform. Now, we're going to also look at those, how they've got the classes laid out. So I've used the example of Algebra 1. If they're doing quadratic equations, 6 weeks into this, that's not something we get to till maybe mid-spring. We're going to talk to them and say, we need to adjust that.
Oh, okay.
We're also going to look at our program of studies, and it'll mirror the course offerings that they have. So just because they offer Mandarin doesn't mean you're now going to be able to take Mandarin, because that doesn't align with what we're offering in our school district. So that's what that sentence is saying.
And that produces inequity. We don't think anybody should get a bonus for being in person or a bonus for going to the online
Right.
program. So we're going to try to mirror the offerings as much as possible so that somebody doesn't feel like they got an extra benefit from making one choice or the other. All right, and the biggest point I think of misunderstanding with our community, and again, it's because I believe it's because it's all so new, is the comparison between the online, 100% online option and if Tipp City would go to remote learning. All right, when Tipp City goes to remote learning, you will see if you're in Mrs. Johnson's class when we're open for 5-day in-person school, when we go to remote learning, you will see Mrs. Johnson in your online classes at home. All right, there are some people who believe that automatically, if we go to remote, we're signing everybody up for school's POP, and whether they chose it or not, that's where everybody's going for their online. No, you will see similar to what you saw, but improved. What you saw in the spring, where the teachers go online and they're conducting class, through the Google format. You will see that in remote learning 2.0.
But isn't it also correct that those that started in PLP, if, let's say, 2 months into this, we would have to go to remote learning, those that started in PLP stay in PLP, is that correct?
Yes, that's the plan. Yes,
Okay.
Parents, we believe that if we go remote too close to the beginning of the school year, that some people that chose PLP are going to ask, if they can be rolled back into, Tipp City, because now everybody's online and they would have a chance to have a local teacher, doing their remote. And so we would have to manage that on a case-by-case basis.
And the PLP online, full-time online is initially, the increment is the first semester, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Because what happens is we have to purchase licenses to match the number of students that are signed up in school's PLP. And so as anything in the business sector, there's a cost for every license. And so if we're paying for this student to be in PLP, we have to at least give a semester commitment to that, and we have to pay the invoice for those licenses. And if people have to come out if there are emergency reasons or something, then they'll have to, request a waiver to the semester, structure, and to try to get back in before the first semester is over.
If a student parents want to make that choice to get into the PLP program and they do not have a device at home,
That's us.
they are going to contact the school.
Yes, and we're going to go up again off the survey. We've got a percentage of people that said we do not have an individualized device for each of our students. Much like the spring, we will be doing device signouts to make sure that the students have the devices that they need. Because if they're in PLP, they're our students still. They're Tipp City students. They get to maintain that status. And so we provide the resources to help them complete their education. As you can see on the next, go scroll in the middle of the next page, Dave, if you could. You see in remote 2.0, everybody remembers in the spring, and schedules were kind of broad and rules about grades were kind of broad and those things, that was all out there because it was all new and it was all just like, hey, it's starting next week. And so they said the students were surprised, a lot of adults were in an environment that they weren't familiar with. So it was a little bit, we're going to do the best we can to provide education, but students with their grades should be punished because of the new environment if they don't handle it well. Well, now that folks have had some experience with it, and we have had the chance, and it'll begin in earnest next week, our staff members are going to go through more training about remote learning. We now have a suggested structure out of our task force for what remote learning looks like. And so we have it broken down in what it looks like for K through 3, what it looks like for 4th and 5th grade, what it looks like for 6th or 8th grade, and 9 through 12. And as you can see, there are minimal expectations for online live instruction at all of the levels. There's a day in the middle of the week that's dedicated for small group instruction, additional help, student feedback, and checking in with your teacher if you're struggling with the lessons. And then if students are absent, we'll have makeup opportunities so they can get some guided support to catch up. And in addition to all of that, teachers will hold office hours for students to check in on a daily basis in the afternoons. And then on Wednesday, when they have that small group format, students will have the chance to check in on their own for additional help. So each level will have an expectation of seeing their teachers live, for several hours per day. That is a difference, and that is potentially the compare contrast between a school's PLP national model and local remote learning from our teachers. That we can actually designate bell schedules, if you will, and times that the teachers are going to be online and the students can participate in a live class format in our remote learning.
I think you said previously, again, this is another opportunity to reinforce some of how it will be different.
Yep.
There will be attendance.
Yes.
There'll be consequences for failure to complete work or to show up.
Yes, most definitely. There's going to be attendance expectations. There's going to be work completion expectations, and the grading process is going to be a lot more familiar with face-to-face school than it was to last spring.
In contrast, Mr. Stefani, that just triggered something that I think people will probably be wondering on the PLP program. Is that more self-monitored, self-paced, or is there a?
Yes, that has more flexibility than our remote learning. In PLP, and I'll use your example, if people are in history class in our remote learning and that teacher is running her live session at 10 a.m., you need to be there at 10 a.m. to see that live session. If 10 a.m. doesn't work for you and you're in the PLP program, you can sign in to the American history class whenever it works for you during the day. You can access the lesson, you can access the activities, and you can do it whenever you want. At the last board meeting, somebody gave an excellent example. They said that in the spring, a lot of the high school kids, they were utilizing midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning to get their work done. Well, you'll have that option in a school's PLP type of online program. I don't think too many teachers will be volunteering to say today's lesson is happening at 1 a.m. I don't think too many of the teachers will be doing that. They'll stick closer to the traditional school time schedule. And so some of that flexibility with the students won't be there, but with assignments, it still would. But the direct instruction model would have to be when it was scheduled from your child's teachers.
Was there any conversation to have 5 days, not have Wednesdays off?
I wasn't in that task force. You want to?
Yeah, there was. What we heard from the teachers was the amount of planning and time that's needed to create the videos that are gonna be needed to collaborate with their team members, and still do the live instruction is not necessarily feasible within that structured day. And so also to make up time with students who are absent or have connectivity issues. So let's say you miss one of your class periods, then we need time to be able to meet up and talk about what you missed, give you that instruction, and move forward from there.
With that in mind, I can say that with the amount of activities that may occur outside the live class sessions, the students may need more than whatever's left in the school day after the live sessions are done to be able to keep up. And so they may need the rest of Tuesday, and they may need part of Wednesday just to be ready for when Thursday starts up again. But it's something that we can monitor, and if we feel that that students need more or the structure needs to be revised, it's something that can be discussed quarter by quarter as we move through the process. And we also have to monitor how often we're using it. We might be able, if things settle a bit, we might be able to stay with the face-to-face option for a high percentage of the year, and that would be great as long as everybody can stay healthy. And so we'll look at it as we put it into practice. If it needs to be revised or tweaked, we can do that with some warning to, not warning in a negative sense, but with some notification that, hey, we're going to revise the format in 2 weeks or at the Thanksgiving break or whatever, and it can be enhanced at that point.
Could you just speak to that a little bit more? Because I think there is an impression from some family members that we're going to start, go remote, and then start, and then go remote, and how disruptive that would be. And I know we've received questions about why not just do the first 9 weeks online? Has that been considered? I know that we've received lots of mail saying don't consider that.
Right.
But how are we going to minimize the disruption of going on 5-day in person, then remote, and the potential to go back and forth? Can you just speak to that for a minute? I know there's probably not a definitive answer, but how can we minimize that disruption?
Right, and there was also a request to keep the task forces intact, to use them as points of reference if needed. That's one of the conversations that the instructional task force would undertake if something would happen and we would have to shift. All right, so we make the shift. How quickly? Do we go from live to online if it's not an order, a direct order like stop Friday, and then if things ease up and we're allowed back, what does that transition look like? So if we hear about it on a Thursday, I don't think it would be very feasible that Friday we're back. They said we could come back, so let's come back. It just that's not we're sequenced very well, and so does it take us a week to finish up what we're working on in the online world and then reacclimate to the 5-day program? Does it take us longer than that? And that's the conversation that we engage teachers in. How do you go from this format to this format and actually put that structure in place?
Well, your task force are creating these answers in response to not having had these situations. So it's almost, we presume it will be this way. So this is how we're responding. So in relation to just that question, I would recommend that the task force stay involved in all areas, because once you start to implement, there's going to be new questions that arise.
Oh, sure. I was just using that one as an example because your question was about the instructional program. Sure. But yeah, we have the task forces, for example, on student safety and enhanced cleaning. We look about evaluate the program that we put in place. Is that enough attention to high touch point areas? Is that enough attention to the restrooms? Is that enough attention between lunch periods? Those types of things. And so we can bring those task forces, as consulting groups, throughout the year as we look at operations.
Well, until you start operating, there's going to be things you probably didn't even think of.
Sure.
So
Yep.
we have to be responsive to that and making sure that we communicate now how we're answering that.
Yes, I agree. All right, in the next section, this is another piece that people were worried about, the definition of safety at school. And what we have is suggestions from our nurses task force, which is taken right from national medical association recommendations. And so they talk about student and staff illnesses. Everyone needs to be monitoring their own health and well-being, and anyone that has a fever over 99.9 needs to take preventative measures before they even come to school on that particular day. Then we have protocols in place for how the clinic operates. There's going to be different areas of the clinic for different services, and anything that goes with COVID-19, it's got to stay isolated from any other type of need that presents itself in the clinic. And so we will have those either various areas or cordon off areas from some of our clinics if there's space available inside one clinic. But it's looking more like multiple rooms to take care of multiple needs.
I had a question on the, I guess it's right above it's right below employee student safety. It's on the page after that, right when you the next page, Mr. Beerhoff. The first paragraph there says staff with fevers may return when they have been fever-free for 24 hours without fever reducing. Are they intending to say the 10 days or more calendar days and 24 hours with fever reducing medication on that? Because I think that's what the CDC guidelines are.
Yeah, they're
It's further down than there.
Yeah.
It talks about and 10 days. In the
Yes.
bigger
Well, I'm
paragraph.
talking about the first one. The first one seems like it's creating a different criteria. If you have these symptoms, which all could be COVID related, and you have a fever, then it seems to say staff can come back after fever free for 24 hours without adding the additional 10 days, because my understanding is it's 10 days and from the date your symptoms began, and 24 hours without fever reducing medication, whichever happens later.
right. That's a question that we've been asking our health department folks a lot. For example, and one example we actually received from someone during the last conference call or Zoom meeting is that someone, is prone to migraine headaches. And some people, when they get migraine headaches, there's a fever associated with that. And so that person, that's where I was trying to get. They have a headache, that's a COVID symptom. They have a fever, that's a COVID symptom. So does automatically anybody that presents those things, are they automatically out of school for 10 days, whether it's a staff or a student? And that's where some of these policies and procedures kind of clash. The recommendation is, yes, on the safe side, everybody's out for 10 days and you have to be fever-free for 24 hours. But then protocols say, if it's not a COVID illness, then those are treated differently. And that's where our nurses are going to have to make some determinations. Our nurses in the task force, they came up with the example is when it gets hot at our two primary buildings, the little ones come down, and what's the first thing that they say? I have a tummy ache. And again, there's nausea, there's, vomiting, but it could happen because some people react to excessive heat that way. And so the nurses are going to have to determine whether the kindergartner or first grader is responding to the heat or whether they have to respond to it as a COVID-19 symptom.
I'm not a health professional, but I don't see how anybody can make that determination without a test. And I think if our goal is to keep kids in the schools as long as possible, that we just have to be overly cautious and people have to stay home. I mean, that would be my preference. I thought this was a typo. I just don't see how anybody without a test can determine whether it's COVID related or heat related.
Yeah. That's the one line that the health professionals are struggling to define. But you're right. If you want to go and it's an answer that the nurses did receive. If you want to be on the safest protocol possible, then if anybody presents any symptom, then it's a 10-day minimum and then fever-free for 24 hours in addition to the 10 days.
Would you accept the clear results of a COVID test to permit the student or the staff to come back?
I think that was covered and they said no.
It says in that even when you're quarantining, that no, you're not supposed to.
So pretty much if they're suspected to be COVID related, like a nurse, is that what the point of the flow of it is? Like the school nurse says, Mom and Dad, I suspect that we have a COVID situation, that child has to stay home for, is it 10 or 14 days? Because that's where I'm a little bit confused.
Yeah, the suspected piece is 10 days. The quarantine piece, after a positive test, that's the 14.
So they call Mom and Dad, let's just say they're at Nevin, little kid was out running around, got all hot, and now he's got a headache and a stomach ache because he's hot running around, which always happens after lunch. Because they eat and then they go run around and eat.
Right.
So then they go to the nurse, and because now he's got 2 symptoms, the nurse calls Mom and Dad and says, Mom or Dad or guardian says, your child has a headache and a stomach ache, 2 symptoms of COVID. You have to stay home for 10 days. It doesn't matter if Mom and Dad takes them and gets them and they have a negative test. At that point, they still have to stay home for 10 days.
That's the information that was shared with us. Yes.
That just seems a lot to put on parents when we know that.
Well, I think if we don't do that and then somebody has COVID and then we have the whole school out, we're going to be regretting it. I think it's obviously going to place a burden, but the needs of the many, I think, need to outweigh the needs of the few on this issue. If our goal is to keep kids in school as long as possible, that's just kind of the new reality right now.
Maybe there's a middle ground a little bit rather than sending home 50 first graders after recess, after lunch. I mean, maybe the middle ground would be if the symptoms don't subside after sitting in the clinic for 30 minutes. I mean, I know you're gonna have to distance people, but for a lot of families, that's gonna be a hardship not going to work for 10 days. And I think that we need to be very cognizant of our families' economic situations that we are not privileged to.
I don't think we're gonna have 50 kids. If we have 50 kids, we probably have COVID. And then if we send 1 to 10 kids home and they do have COVID, we're gonna be glad we did, or else everybody else is gonna get COVID and we're gonna have kids at home, and the economic impact is gonna be spread across more families than just a few.
Yeah, I think 50 was probably too many, but I do think we need to be thinking about just making calls without, I mean, and you're a nurse, like what do you give kids? I mean, I don't know if you've ever worked with kids. Do you give, because I know as a teacher, when kids would come back from the recess, especially after lunch, I would say, just go sit at your desk, put your head down. I also worked in a building without air conditioning. I would do those kind of things. Let's just be quiet. We'll turn the lights off after recess because it was extremely hot in there. Okay. And I was a single level building, kind of, not very dissimilar to Nevin, because then I had blacktop and it just, it's soaking hot. So I think that there's got to be some kind of middle ground as far as when, I don't know.
Are you still meeting with Miami County and the Miami County Superintendents and Public Health? Is this a specific question you could ask? Because this can't be unique to our district,
Well,
and it's gonna happen.
Well,
And we have staff that have headaches.
They know
in the
air
afternoon
conditioning,
in
it's
the
the air
park.
conditioning.
Yeah, and that was a question, and again, it was that there was no, there was no definitive recommendation or mandate, because they said, you know, the nurses, you know, if they've been a nurse in a building for a while, they know the kids, they know some of the things that typically present, and then they know things that aren't typical, you know, and so that
So
takes
it's
into
nurse
account like the
discretion.
recess type of thing. So the nurse could, you know, could make that call. But then when they were asked, what if we just aren't sure, then they said you go to the 10-day version. Now on here, it also says, students should stay home from school until fever-free without the use of medication for 3 days, and other symptoms are improving in 10 days since symptoms first appeared, may return to school sooner if illness is non-COVID-19 related and cleared by a medical professional. Now, if we wanted to put in there verified non-COVID-19 related and cleared by a medical professional, then that would say, you know, we want them to have a test, you know, to verify that it's non-COVID-19, and if symptoms are improving, so that then they could come back before the 10 days.
I think this is also
Some test results could take 5 to 10 days to get back.
do that.
So,
Depending,
that's the
yes,
solution.
depending what lab and you're going with, right? That's what they have said.
And I'm not trying to minimize, I think you make a great point, Corinne. I'm not trying to minimize the stress and the burden this is putting on families, but I think we got to look at the big picture here, and if we have an infection that we just dismiss as something else, then we're really, the burden then gets spread among more families. I like this verified medical professional idea. I think that makes sense to me. It kind of meets the middle ground as much as you possibly can.
But I think to interject to that, and I don't necessarily disagree with what Simon's saying, but at the same time, we don't want to perpetuate the false notion that if you're COVID, you're going to be symptomatic, because you could have children there that are not displaying any of this. It doesn't mean they're still not a carrier, and they're still not capable of. So I'm just saying, it's just not so cut and dry, because there's symptomatology involved, therefore, oh, okay. And because you're not symptomatic, okay, then you're over here. It's just not that easy. So relying on symptoms as the sort of the
Gatekeeper.
is I think a little dangerous to do that.
Well, how do we, so I don't disagree with you that COVID spreads airborne and without symptoms, 100% agree with that. But are we going to be testing kids every week? Or, I mean, I guess how do you, the reason symptoms kind of make sense to me is because it's something we can identify and it's something you can implement. I don't think you're going to be able to stop anybody from coming in that has it. But I guess how do you deal with the asymptomatic, or do you have a suggestion related to asymptomatic?
No, I guess my point only was trying to say, Simon, is that, yeah, if you, just because we're looking at this list, sort of like it's the Bible, well, it's just a roadmap. Of the other roadmap, there could be none of this on there. And the student is as virile, if not more than, so I just try to, don't rely so much on just this. Of course, you can't ignore this. It has to be factored into, you know, a clinical presentation and what decision you make based on that. But the asymptomatic can be there too.
So what do I rely on? I'm not trying to say, I don't think it's possible, I guess, unless we test kids before they come to school once a week.
I don't know. I think it would be, I don't know.
I guess what I'm saying is obviously there's going to be people that are asymptomatic. We can't stop that unless we start testing every kid every week, which is, I don't think even feasible.
Yeah, you
So-
gotta test them every day.
Unless we're the,
Yeah.
unless we're Major League Baseball, and even, we're not gonna get that right anyway. So, so I guess, so right now I'm left with only one thing is a red flag, which is the symptoms. So I'm not relying on this. I'm just saying, if we have a red flag, my preference would be is to take a more aggressive approach to give us the highest chance of having kids in school as long as possible. And I think that the ability to come back with some verified results from the doctor kind of provides another swing back to get kids back in school and provide parents some relief. Obviously, you know, asymptomatic transmission is what it is. There's not much you can do on that.
And I think this too kind of segues into another question that, and this might be too much in the weeds, but should parents choose in-person instruction, is there also going to be from the beginning of the school a maintenance of a Google Classroom so that if their kid has to go home for 10 days, they don't have to worry about that disjuncture of instruction going on?
Yes, we're transitioning away from what we've had in the past with teacher web pages on our district website to now Google Classrooms that will start day one.
Support instruction so that if a
Yep.
kid does go home, that they have that, so that
Exactly,
they're not losing 10 days of instruction.
exactly.
Well, that's good to
So
know.
I would caution us to use our school nurse personnel because they have a variety of license or some are more of a nurse aide, some are licensed nurses. I would caution us about using their role to diagnose our staff or direct our staff. Our staff need to go see their health care provider or a healthcare provider of their choosing and not rely on our nurses for that or our school nurse aides. And I think when our school nurses or nurse aides are reporting, they're reporting symptoms, not the directive of go get COVID tested or these are the symptoms of COVID. They just need to report the symptoms.
Right.
And then whatever protocol is in place, I'm sure it's gonna be scripted because this is going to happen probably.
So wait, what are you talking about? Like when they call home?
Right.
Oh,
I think there were some examples used that, and I know you didn't mean those verbatim, of,
Right.
hey, this is COVID, this is symptom. It just, Tommy has a stomach ache and Tommy has a fever of 99. That's the facts, and then whatever is the protocol that is expected next.
so I think that's a good point. Who is going to say, your child had 2 symptoms? Our guidelines are this and that. Is that a school nurse conversation or is that a principal conversation?
No, that's the recommendation, that's the clinic's
So the
recommendation.
nurse is gonna be having that conversation.
Yeah.
And then communicating that back to the teacher so that the kid doesn't come back to class the next day, that they're caught. Because sometimes parents don't really understand what you just told me was my kid can't come back. So that needs to be really clear that we've communicated that. So if the kid does show up the next day,
You can't be here.
right, like
Well,
there's,
right, that's exactly what it'll be. It'll be, that notification will be in the office. And so then if the student, does show up, at school, then, he's been told he has to go back home. They'll be on a list of
Okay.
ones that are on 10 days, so they'll be actually charting to see what day everybody's on. And so it's gonna be pretty significant.
so the school nurse's job just got pretty big.
Well, the attendance
Absolutely.
secretary.
Or is that gonna be, yeah, is that gonna be the
Yeah, our-
attendance secretary?
Where are you gonna
attendance-
put these folks?
Yeah, our attendance secretaries are gonna have an extra layer now.
Right. Well, it also says at the end, it also says at the end for the students to gain access, once they're on this list, they have to be readmitted back through the clinic. And so they have to come through and prove that they're symptom-free and that they don't have a fever. And, mom said, oh, he's been fever-free. And if he walks in the clinic and the nurse takes temperature, he's got a fever, then he's not fever-free and he gets
So-
returned back home.
There are
And to
return to school
Joellen's
protocol.
Point, are they gonna have that script so that every school nurse is communicating the same thing with consistency?
Yes.
Okay,
They're already there.
they're already there, great.
They're on this task force, trust me, they're already there.
And the online instruction component. Now you're online through Google Classroom. This is how you resume the educational experience while you're at home.
Right. Right, and that would probably come more
Whatever
from,
you have.
that would come from the teacher and perhaps even the building principal at that point, but that would, the instructional component wouldn't come from the nurse.
No,
The medical,
I understand,
yeah.
but maybe some sort of typed out,
Right.
this is what this means, and this is how you're going to continue your educational experience while you're recuperating from whatever it is your symptoms mean.
And then that piece is in there that if the parent says, I know my kid does not have this is the typical thing for when he gets an ear infection, when he gets this or whatever, then they have the option here that they can go to their family doctor, they can go and get a test, and then with the medical recommendation, they can come back before the 10 days. Again, there are some people that are prone to, strep throat, there's some people prone to ear infection, so if the parents know that, could it be COVID? Yeah, it could be COVID, but it could also be these other things that share a lot of these same symptoms.
Like asthma.
Right.
I'm thinking that's
Yeah.
the big one. on
Right,
top of my
they
head.
could go to their family doctor, they could get tested, and with the doctor's medical piece, they may not have to do the 10 days then because the doctor said this is what it is, and then they get readmitted back to school. Unless they have a fever.
I'm sorry, did you just say they go and then they get the COVID test if it's negative, and then they come back?
Yes, if they get sent home based on symptoms
Mhm.
and they
And that's being challenged, and they go get a test.
right,
and then-
they go get checked out by the doctor and they said the reason for this, the reason for that is this, and it's not COVID. If the medical professional states that, then the family can present that to the clinic and they can get back sooner than the 10 days. Now, for non-COVID, there are already protocols in place on how long you have to be fever-free and without medication and those things. So those things are all still there, and the clinic nurses already know about those. So the parent's job is to prove that it's not COVID. And then when that happens, then they still have to be symptom-free to get clearance on the regular readmittance procedures that have already been always been in our clinic.
So since it's the parent's job to prove it's not COVID, do we know what the accessibility is of these regionally, what the regional accessibility of COVID testing is that's available?
It may not be available,
Yeah, see, that's where,
but
oh,
it is what it is. I mean, I think that,
careful.
no, I'm serious. It is what it is. We don't have tests. We may have tests. It'll go up and down. This is a potential opportunity to get them back into school sooner, but if the test isn't available,
Exactly.
I think the same principles that applied in the beginning still control, which is if the goal is to keep our kids in school as long as possible, the needs of those students that don't have symptoms are going to have to control, and we're going to have to weigh the needs of the few and the burden placed on the entire school's families or portions of buildings or et cetera, versus one student or a few group of students.
I hear what you're saying, but I guess I was approaching it from a little different of an angle. Simon, my approach is, do we have information available and readily? Are we planning to be able to advise parents where they may be
Where they
able
may
to
go
get
for
that
testing?
COVID testing?
We,
Yes.
we can get that from the health department, yes.
Okay, I think that should be a,
And again, what we know from yesterday's situation, there were tests happening last week.
Oh.
So, the information about yesterday's situation came to us yesterday morning, and the student was tested, late last week, and the results came back on late on Saturday. So that's when we got the notifications.
Yeah, that was really fast.
so I think if you're having these type of protocols that may include or exclude students, then I think, to me, it'd be really beneficial to include as part of that protocol suggestions of accessibility
Testing sites.
to COVID
Yeah, testing sites.
tests, yeah. And then maybe that could even be put on our website or something like that.
Well, this whole plan we put on the
Okay.
website, so I can look at it anytime.
Yeah, that's what we
It's
do.
online.
Okay, thank you.
So again, we went into a little more than a page, almost a page and a half of all the specifics. about what occurs when you have either a non-COVID type illness, COVID illness, and any symptom that may pop up. And so it is on the more cautious side. So it is, actually isolating students and sending students home as they start presenting anything that might be COVID related to try to keep the sites as safe as possible.
Several of the parent community emails coming in is questioning the district's preparedness for staff illnesses. And do we have adequate numbers of subs and to be able to, like have to triage? Like
Yes.
we're really in.
Yes, we did a contact, and I'll let Mr. Veeroff talk about that. We did a contact with a lot of our subs from last year. We did reach out. The one concern that has been raised as the key position is what happens if some of our nurses or our nurse aides get sick. Do we have enough access to other medical professionals to come in and help out? And what I can say on that, although they have not, in essence, promised staff, we've been received an offer from Premier Health that said, we're here to help you guys when you have some issues. So if you have anything, give us a call. And the conversation was mostly around resources, but if they become human resources that are in need, we hope they would step up and provide us at least some consultation on where to get some substitute nurses. But Mr. Veeroff, if you want to talk about substitute teachers?
There's not a whole lot more to add there, other than in a normal school year, you have sub shortages. And so now with this situation, typically you have retired teachers who are your substitute teachers. And we've had a couple teachers who have said, I'm not going to sub this year, retired teachers who have said they're not going to sub this year. So I think anybody knows people that want to sub, send them our way. We're going to be doing a full tilt recruiting effort here later this month and in early September to try to get as many subs as we can.
But on the other side, there have been some suggestions from some fellow superintendents that if teachers are being quarantined or they're asymptomatic, could the teacher actually maintain the instruction in his or her classroom through a Zoom meeting?
It's a great idea.
And then we utilize a paraprofessional to be the monitor for classroom management in the room, but then up on the screen, there's their real teacher, the one that they're used to, providing the instruction from home.
That's awesome.
over a video and a video format. It's live. It's a video format, but and then you just have another staff member in the classroom, monitoring the students, making sure that they're on task.
That's a great idea.
If they're healthy and they can do that, then that's a suggestion from some other districts, and so we can have a conversation with our association and get that in process as well.
And when we talked specifically about that in our task force, and the teachers were fully on board with that. That if they're asymptomatic and can participate in that manner, they would, and they would want to.
Mhm.
But if they are symptomatic, obviously that's not feasible.
Right, if they're very, very ill, then they do not need to be, lesson planning and being on the screen, in front of the. But again, if they get caught up in, possibly a spouse and at their work, something happened and the family starts to get quarantined, where they have to be out for a couple of weeks, but they don't show any symptoms and they're not sick and they feel that they've got the energy, then they can continue to teach their classes just as if they were in the classroom.
We talked as well about having emergency sub plans in place in the event that something happens suddenly. That's always something that we talk about with our teachers, but this is even more important this year. At the elementary levels, sometimes when you don't have a substitute teacher, you're farming out kids to other classrooms. That's not a practice we're going to be able to do this year. And so we may have to look at utilizing other teachers in other areas to provide that coverage.
Do we have a threshold for when we've hit enough teachers that have been quarantined that we're gonna go to remote learning?
We don't have the stated threshold yet, but
Is that like in the work section?
yeah, that's something to monitor and look. It's just like sometimes folks have had illness outbreaks in students that weren't a virus like this. There was just, and so when you get to a certain percentage, there's so many students missing school that the whole school just needs to take a break. And then you do a super cleaning job on the school to try to get the flu germ out of there. And then you welcome everybody back after 2 or 3 days and do a startup. So we'll be doing the same kind of monitoring that if the educational setting is significantly impacted, then we could, and it would be building by building. So if one building is having an issue, we wouldn't say, hey, the whole district, is going remote. We could actually go remote building by building and then invite them back when we don't have that high absence rate.
Something else that we considered with substitute teachers is you often have substitute teachers who are subbing in multiple districts. And so that's something that we're going to ask substitutes to report when they come to us, when they check in. That would be part of their check-in process, is to say, I subbed in Milton Union yesterday. I was at Bradford the day before that, but to give us kind of an idea of where they've been so that we know if there's something that happens at one of those school districts, we had one of those individuals in our building as well.
So our list right now of subs, I always like to anticipate the worst, hope for the best, but it's not really that enhanced. Is that right? It's pretty much what
it's not. It is.
Probably less than it all.
Is it atypical or is it typical?
It's typical. It's typical, but it's not where we would want it to be, and certainly not where we would want it to be this
I
time.
don't think that's a bad idea.
You make a $200, you're gonna get everybody here.
That's just what I wanted to segue into. What can we do? Because I'm going to anticipate, people not being able to come to work.
Mhm.
And so Dave, if you have, I'd like to pre-think this now to prepare for it. Does it help if we increase the payout for this?
People always come where there's money. So, yeah, we increased the sub rate already. It was 95. We put it up to 100. That was right at the beginning of when COVID started happening. But, Steve already mentioned your best sub is a retired teacher.
They may reconsider if the rate goes.
Well, but it also, there is a risk involved with people of a higher age, and that's our retired people, asking them to come in and teach. You might not be getting the retired teachers, but if we just need a teacher, I think it was Fairborn City Schools that was offering retired teachers $150 a day for substitute teaching.
That was last year, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's been increased or not from that, but if it comes down to it and we don't have the subs, you increase the sub rate, people will come.
So is that something we should sort of prepare for and?
It doesn't have to be done today.
No.
We're not
today,
sure, but we can always increase that rate later this year if we need to. If we find we're having a hard time, be a good thing to do.
I'm not asking for the answer on this. I just want to make sure that we're discussing what are the, I guess I would call it grace, because our staff have children. Their children may be sent home from their schools, or they may have been exposed and they're going to then have to stay home with them. Will that remote teaching opportunity be available for them in that kind of circumstance, recognizing that they're still watching their children while they're teaching?
Yes, it's very possible and probably probable that, if a teacher is at home, that the family, would be around or be at home as well. And so we made the offer for the remote learning. It would be very similar to the spring. Students were home and the teachers were home. And so they would then have to, figure out how to manage all that while they're teaching their classroom.
I don't want to get in the weeds either, but are you prepared for the staff person that's going to ask I'm afraid or I'm at a high risk, may I just do remote learning? Can I teach remotely full time?
We're prepared for that, and we've also had some preliminary meetings like that. And currently, the request is not there. It is not available at this time. That request is not there at this time. What we have is we've got an outline of conditions that have to be present for somebody to get excused from reporting to work. And it's a very limited list that goes in. And so if you qualify under those guidelines, then you have the option of an alternate to coming to work. If you don't qualify for those guidelines and it's just anxiety, and your anxiety is keeping you from coming in, unless the anxiety is documented by a mental health professional, then there aren't too many options that we have right now.
And that's like the federal guidelines, right? For that
Yeah.
COVID FMLA. That's not like stuff we're just making up.
No.
Yeah,
It's a federal program.
We're an employer and I want to make sure that we are exploring all the options to protect our staff. Of course, we want to protect children and we want to do right by families, but
Sure.
we want to make sure that we are listening to what their needs are.
And we did get some information today, and it was asked if it fit into our conversation, to share it. There was a survey taken by the TCEA, and the percentages of concern amongst the staff are elevated from where they were in our staff survey that we took in July. So there's a little more of a concern in our staff, as we get closer to the beginning of the school year.
Anxiety is probably kicking in.
Yes. But yeah, that's what we're going to do, and that's what these task force did. We want it to be safe for everybody, adult and student, in the buildings, and part of that, and the community may not understand this either. Part of that is limiting the N number, inside the building. And so when you're actually, telling parents, no, you can't come visit the school and you can't just walk in the front door, like you used to. There are going to be some extra restrictions on there. Some, might feel disrespected by that, but it's keeping, when I talk to this task force member, it's like keeping an expanded family unit together in each building. And you can't bring in, the UPS guy isn't welcome in anymore. The mailman's not welcome in anymore. I mean, food deliveries are just drop, and then our folks are probably going to have to do extra work to get it from outside to inside where it needs to go. All those things are going to be restricted, but it's the same thing for, any type of parent visit to the school. It's going to have to be by appointment. It's going to have to, go specifically to an area, and visits to the school and, experiencing your child's education, those types of things have to be put on hold, because then you're bringing foreign experiences into the school. And so you're just trying to keep it to be your school population and, on a day-to-day basis.
It's a delicate balance of how you're going to teach and manage COVID with the resources that you have, because you can't rely on any additional resources coming to help you.
Right, exactly.
I was working with a first year teacher and she put on her biography. I welcome all parents anytime they want to come in, just please come to my classroom and talk to me early and often. I said,
not this year.
No, I know that's the first year of teaching experience you thought you were going to have.
Right.
But that's not the nuts and bolts of this year. Yeah.
Right.
You don't think about those things, like,
Yeah.
All right. I'll try to finish up quickly here as we go. The communications piece, on the next page, we actually, for the most part, lived that yesterday, it's right above face masks. Right there. Oh, just up a little bit more. Right there.
Here we go.
Yeah. We were in consultation with the health department. We did, create communications out to groups involved. And the health department did their job on interviewing folks and checking out practice schedules and so forth and so on. And they were the ones that came up with a recommendation for quarantine based on the information that they had. And I thought, again, not having done it before, I know they've done it before with other school districts, but we hadn't, done it before. And I thought the precision that they worked with and the information they provided us on a very short timeline was impressive. And so they said they were going to be there for us when these cases came up, and they were there yesterday, and that was appreciated. Jumping down to face masks and face shields, just some definitions about what face masks are and having to get permissions to use face shields. Again, we have to report to the health department any staff member or student who is not wearing a mask and they're wearing something different. And folks that have a medical condition that is the reason that they're asking for a waiver for the mask, they have to have a medical document to back that up. And then we have to provide the list. We keep the documents, but we have to provide the list to the health department, because that comes into, if a case pops up, they have to know who has masks on and who doesn't with the contact tracing process. People have asked, will there be mask breaks? Yes. Exactly the time of day that those occur will be decided between the principals and their staffs. But to me, there are some natural transition points that present themselves in every classroom. And so as teachers get a little more familiar with it, they can figure out how to work a mask break and spread people out a little bit so that everybody gets a break as much as possible. There are some natural ones, lunch, anywhere you go, restaurants that still have, in-restaurant dining. It says you don't have to wear a mask while you're eating. It makes it a little more difficult, if you got a mask across your face. So you're allowed to take the mask off while you're in the process of eating. So that's a natural mask break for everybody when we have lunchtime. And then recess, the same thing. When you're involved in physical activity, you're allowed to have, a mask break, so that you can participate in the physical activity. But again, in those situations, then social distancing is of the ultimate importance, because you got to keep that distance as you're breathing harder, then your droplets are going further, and or there may be more of them. And so being even further away from everybody else is very important.
I wonder if there are some ways to reassure families that our staff, especially in the elementary schools that are not air conditioned, that they will use good judgment and give as many mask breaks as possible.
Yeah.
They already give lots and lots of water and cool air breaks and popsicles. And so I would imagine that they're going to exercise the same kind of judgment on how to manage that and balance it.
Most definitely. But before we even heard any parent concerns about the primary buildings, the staff members were sharing those concerns, and they're sharing what they do to try to, lessen the impacts of the heat. The fan question was a big concern, because when we first heard that you can't use fans, what do you mean you can't use fans? Because on one side of the recommendation was maximize ventilation, open windows and get the air circulating. And then we heard there are no fans, and so we had to ask the health department. They said it's the direct blowing on people that could create a risk, and so use the fans for air circulation to try to keep people out of the direct line of the breeze, if you will. So there's been some other questions on here about that this is a school document, and so there are some questions about extracurriculars or clubs. Again, though the mask provisions, are in place for any group activity. So whether it's during the school day or whether it's after the school day, again, things like sporting events, when you're involved in physical activity, you don't have a mask on. But anybody that's at that event, like a spectator or a coach, they're supposed to be masked up while they're coaching those events. Other things that are a little more academic rather than athletic, STEM clubs, chess clubs, academic challenge groups, any other type of a club like that, that's participating, especially if they're indoors, they have a mask mandate as well. And so, we just got to utilize them as much as we can to make sure students are safe with whatever type of activity they're participating in. And hands cleaning.
Now, may I ask about the masks? I'm
Yes.
sorry.
Yep.
So am I correct that we're moving to this mandated mask policy because of the recent directives from the governor that Ohioans need to be masked in public spaces? Is that correct?
Yes, that's where ours expanded from the original recommendation of 4th grade through 12th grade down to K through 12. Was off of the state mandate. Yes.
And I mean, I'm not trying to be an obstructionist here, but I mean, say be careful what you wish for. Okay, so we're going to have instruct these children K through 12. Now, what happens? What's going to be the mindset when the little 6-year-old keeps taking it off, and the teacher has to keep addressing it, and then 2 more take it off. And now that 2 rooms over there doing it, and I mean, how many of these kids can you send to the office? How many times can you be doing this without losing focus for your class? I mean, what?
Well, you can't send them to the office for taking their mask off.
Yeah.
That's gonna be bad.
That's what I'm saying.
I don't know, I totally get it, I
They
totally
go
get
for
it.
the quote,
Yeah.
the little, you don't
Right.
need to be that
Especially if they go down to the
I
office
want
and
to
somebody
look
else
at
is
this from a real world perspective when
Right.
you're dealing with these little
I think they
minds.
fall into line with whatever structure the teacher sets from the very first day. That's been my
Some
experience.
children do, Joellen, but others don't. And they're the same ones that struggle with other things. And if they have, a lot of sensitivity issues,
Right.
a lot of speech, come up with what's going to happen. And
Right.
so,
And it's going to be, I think there are going to be some, I'll use an educational term, some formative weeks, where
That's a great way to put it.
where you have to focus on it. It actually becomes part of the teaching process in the classroom. And our primary teachers are pretty talented, and so they know how to encourage and how to motivate, and yes, for some, how to be a little more stern, to get them to comply with what needs to happen in this classroom.
Somebody's written a song, I'm sure, where there's a clapping chant to encourage.
We do
They're
have a
creative.
structure in place, it's called the PBIS system.
Right.
So I'm assuming that a part of that is to be safe.
Sure.
And this wearing the mask would fall under be safe. I know that, just working that into that matrix, talking about steps we're taking, why we're taking them. You're right, there are gonna be those kids that are those more resistant to wearing a mask, and I'm sure you guys will come up with protocols for teachers, because it can't, you're right, it can't be go down to the office, like that can't be the solution, there's gotta be other
No,
solutions.
Yeah, and I firmly believe, we said it on our community meetings, that question came up, and I go, what's the punishment gonna be for it? Whoa, that's not the angle, it's not the approach.
Redirect.
The approach is,
Redirect.
it's a redirect, but it's also education. It's talking about, we didn't just come up with, hey, how can we annoy people? When they come into school, let's just put a mask mandate on them, and that'll be an extra thing. We're doing it for safety reasons, and there are some, there's health documentation that says this helps everybody. And so it's about being, considerate and respectful of everyone, and even the younger ones. Do you want to help your classmates? Do you want to help your teacher? Those types of things. You have those conversations, and we get to a very high percentage of people that can get used to it, they can handle it. There are gonna be some, you're right, some have, some health issues that might create issues, some have, they just fidget with anything, and so the mask is the next, is the next thing that they have to fidget
Well,
with.
they're in a very heated environment.
Right, and the environment, those environments in the primary buildings, they don't help,
No,
dramatic,
they
but again, they've come up with things before with, extra water breaks and extra walks, and let's go find some shade and those types of things, and so, they'll have to incorporate this into that.
And there will be a
environment.
subset of children that will not be wearing masks, correct? Due to whether it's their medical condition, because that's one of the exemptions that the
Right.
state allows. So
Right, and if they present the medical documentation, they'll have that, and folks will have to, they'll have to understand why. There are a lot of accommodations that happen in schools, and I think students are very accepting if they just, if they understand what's going on.
And are we providing, I'm assuming we're going to keep an ample supply of masks available in the building, so.
So just the other day, the Ohio Department, Bureau of Workers' Comp, they did send out masks to all school districts in the state. We received 2,050. They're cloth masks. They're in Mr. Pfister's old office, and that is on top of the masks that we had previously purchased that we will have on hand, I believe with the ones that Mrs. Combs has made for the district, the BWC masks, the masks that we've purchased, I believe we have over 7,000 masks available.
I think before Gary left, I said,
Great.
let's get us to 7,500 disposables. So we have the 7,500 if the last order comes in.
Okay.
We'll have 7,500 disposables. We'll have, and I said, there's just something about 3 times the number of students we have that just sticks in my head.
That might just be the first month.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be September.
Yeah, but we also, then we have, Mrs. Combs making one for every staff member and student in the entire district. And those are cloth ones. And so everybody's gonna get a cloth one. Then we have the disposables, and then we have this group that you showed. So we might be closer to 10 or 11,000, for the whole district right now as prepping for the school year.
Yeah, and I'll just add to it, I mean, we were recently made aware of on Friday evening that there is additional federal money that's come through for all schools. So we have mentioned the CARES Act grant that we received earlier, which was roughly about $145,000, and that was based on our Title I numbers. Well, now they've issued another $120,000 for a second federal grant that can be used for COVID supplies and things as well, so.
Like the plexiglass that we just ordered?
That was, I think,
That was not.
that could be, yes, that could be part of it. We didn't have that money yet, but I mean, yes, the plexiglass, the laptops, cleaning solution, face mask, anything that deals with,
Thermometers.
yes,
The
yes,
The
all of
UV
that.
ones, or you can get those UV ones?
Well, this would also mean like maybe stanchions and ways to like mask off areas and signage, would that all be
There's-
included?
Oh, signage, I believe, yes.
So signage, so we already have some signage.
Yeah, we've already purchased signage, that was
Some
before.
signage.
Floor stickers and
Uh-huh.
all the stickers in the bathrooms and on the doors and high touch points.
Yeah, I mean,
Don't
so-
forget to sanitize and.
I was just trying to say, if we need masks, we can get them. We've got a lot now, and if it's a month's worth, then it's a month's worth, and we'll see how many more we can get.
And it is just another opportunity to extend our thanks to Mrs. Combs and her mom for making all those masks and donating them. I know we'd extended that last time. but
That was an
still relevant.
impressive
Yes,
gift,
thank
to the district.
Incredible.
Just a few other things, just so it's out there. Field trips, we just had to put those on pause. Not only does it create a confined group situation on the bus, but then we're traveling to public places and, until we get more control on this, those will just have to be on the back burner. And we'll pick those up when we have a chance.
And back in school assemblies, pep rallies.
Yes.
Well, I know those things are in the weeds, but I know those are questions that are out there. So let's take the opportunity to answer them.
Yes, any large group setting, in excess of a particular class setting. So again, your biggest class settings might be choir and band, or possibly a gym class. And so aside from those, actual grade level assemblies, whole building assemblies, things like that, until we get more guidance on those, those will have to all be put on pause.
So we're intending to have choir, I saw. Is that right?
Yes.
I guess I've seen a lot of different data posted by the CDC on that. The most recent one in some of the scientific studies indicating that choir settings create a super spreader problem because of your expelling droplets to sing. Obviously, you're projecting. How are we going to make that safe?
Well, first off, we're going to minimize any spread. Everybody's going to have to sing with a mask on, and so that the mask mandate's in there as well. And then we spread them out. The picture of a choir on risers, it's not going to be the way we're doing choir. We may have to find a different space so that they can spread out a little bit more in order to do that. We did have a preliminary conversation with our choir instructor, and so she's aware of those needs, and she's already started to put steps in place to make sure it can happen. We got another request today, and I'm going to check it out with the health department and make sure that it's a good intervention for choir. There's something about an air purifier system that says that the rate that the air goes through there, that actually makes the room closer to typical, and that it's not a choir room anymore, type of air quality. And so I'm going to look at the research behind that. Just an email that came in today. So if that is something that enhances the air quality and the masks and the spread out choir environment, I think that's the way we attack the super spreader environment.
How do you deal with wind instruments that require you to press the instrument to your lips?
Well, I have heard that there are masks with slots in them, but in addition to that, our band has already gone to the part where they've got screens over the bells of the instruments. So they've done that, and I think they're doing that even outside. So they've got the screens over the bells, and they're even in an outside environment. So we're taking as many precautions as we can, with that. On top of that, right now, all the bands have for performances are home football games. All the contests have been canceled. Away trips have been canceled. And so they've got home football games, and then we are going to extend to them that there's also a halftime at soccer games. And so if they want to perform for the folks at soccer games, then all this practice, they'll have somebody to perform for.
Speaking of that, I'm sorry, but I read the athletic director's memo about limiting the number of tickets for the football games. And what is it? I'm sorry, I forget the bit for the home team and then for the away team.
Oh, the capacity of the stadium.
The capacity.
Yeah.
But will the band be performing at these events?
Yes, at the home events.
At the home
At
events?
the home events.
So where is the inclusion for the band families in terms of being able to have some?
Well,
Do you see where I'm coming from? I mean,
yeah, that's and I believe we might have a follow-up discussion to the percent of capacity.
I think that's only fair. If they're paying pay to play as well, I understand they're out there for a limited time on the field, but nonetheless, they're doing their thing that makes it. So to just completely exclude that group of parents and family from the admission process, I think is really wrong.
Well, one thing that Beaver Creek does is their band does a full show at the end of the football game. And, it kind of gets a chance for the crowd to turn over.
I don't think it should be at the end. I'm sorry.
They do perform again, and just, because so many people want to see the
Oh,
band, they don't have enough.
halftime and
They
the
do both, halftime and the end.
Like a double citizen comments.
And they don't charge them to come in at the very end to watch it.
That's a great idea.
Yes, but I
Just
don't
to
like the
accommodate.
idea of any, band being
Just-
relegated as the second class group that gets, the left.
I know.
It's been going on too long and
Well, and I don't know if that's the case. I'd have to read the email about the 20%. If it says, football families get the 20% and band families don't. I think
it didn't word that.
Yeah, yeah.
No, it did not say
Okay,
that.
so that's what I'm saying. So I would say if a band family got there before, or they purchased their tickets before, they could be the ones in there. And some football families might be left out if we hit the capacity. But Mr. Kramer and I have had a conversation about that number, the 20%. And we're trying to see if that was recommended by, somebody else, or if that was something that, our league just instituted. And so seeing if we can increase that a little bit.
And I think that does bring up a good point, like, what if it's the same families that can get there every time before the other families, or some,
Right.
maybe some way to make sure that all parents have an opportunity to see their children perform.
That's
whether
right.
it's
Almost like
Football,
like a
yeah,
rotation
exactly.
basis.
And some people might get off work later and you can't get there, get early because you're still at work.
Right.
So they shouldn't be punished.
Yeah.
Well, we,
So just another concern, I don't know, you have so many, and I really want it, I just think you guys have done a great job thinking out all of these nuts and bolts, and I'm not trying to pick your brain, I'm
it's
just,
our- it's
you
our
guys have done a
staff.
great job. If I haven't said it before, thank you.
And you've got everything covered here. So you got Mr. Verhoff, the football player, and you got Mr. Stefanik, the band.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, we have a band person inviting the band here.
I'm an alumni of the Ohio State marching band.
Whoa.
All right, this is great.
That is the best.
So hold on.
You read my resume?
I missed that part. Oh my
Come on,
gosh,
people.
I'm super
The back
excited.
page of the resume. Right there. Right
So hold on, she was talking, I was thinking, shit, who is she talking to?
That's awesome.
there. Because I was gonna say, Ohio State does post-game shows too.
Yeah.
So not just Beaver.
Well, she's a big Ohio State fan, so maybe that's what you were thinking.
No,
Band's my favorite part.
That's right.
That's the best part of the game.
Skill
And-
sessions.
Yeah, and again, it doesn't have to do with the plan, but a little side note, it is in the move. My children have found my trumpet.
Oh.
So we're trying to discourage them.
You're worried about the dog?
So, yeah, so that,
We have an extra one if you need an extra.
So trying
Dog
to
or
discourage-
trumpet?
trying to-
Both.
yeah,
I
trying to
know.
discourage them from
I
that.
do appreciate, reviewing with the athlete, just to help give a little more equal opportunity
Yes.
to the families of all of our students and not just make it an athletic centered.
Right,
perspective.
I agree.
Thank you.
Yeah, and our percentage, I think my number, if I'm doing the math right, our percentage gets us to like 400 or 500, people in the stadium. And so we're just trying to, see if that can go up a little bit, because 400 or 500 in a 2,000, seat stadium, that's a lot of social distancing.
Yeah.
So if we can put some more in there and just keep the social distancing, you might be able to put another 100 or 200 people in there.
There
and
might
still
be
able
other
to do it.
students who want to attend these functions as well. It's
Sure.
not just the parents, the students,
Exactly.
it's their school experience as well.
Right,
So
I understand.
It's a big part of their school
Yeah.
experience.
The only thing we can't do is we can't put 2,000 people in a 2,000 person stadium, because then you can't spread out.
Right.
So, you gotta just keep that in mind. So whatever the percentage ends up being, we're just seeing if there's any flexibility in bumping that up a little bit.
And just a reminder, as high school football brings in a lot of revenue for the athletic department. That is
And
We're
going,
gonna be missing
music
that.
is your-
yeah, that is going to
Musicians,
be, something that is going to be way down this year, just
And so,
athletic revenues.
Yeah, what about concessions?
what
for the
about
music
concession?
booster?
It
Yeah,
is
the
gonna be
music
zero.
boosters.
They're not opening concessions.
No
are
concessions, right?
They will open it?
It is all, they've got to do the safe serve, provisions, just like a cafeteria does.
Okay, very good.
That's great.
Yeah.
I didn't, yeah, okay.
But
That would be
But
for
it
the
doesn't mean
music
it'll be the
boosters to
same.
figure it out.
Yeah, but the flip side is if your percentage of capacity is so far down, how much are you gonna sell? I think
They're
it's
gonna have
such
a
a
lot
thing,
less.
so you gotta, look at all that.
Everybody has to buy a hot dog.
That's a condition of admission.
Hey,
The price is now $8 to get
Chicken
in.
and a hot dog,
They
that's
should
it.
sell that potato salad. If they sell that potato salad, we'd all go.
Okay, at the bottom of the next page, it talks about visitors and volunteers and things like parties. Those have to be limited, and safety protocols such as taking temperatures and the health screening questions that, you have to do when you go into some places of business. Those will be a matter of practice for visitors. And so it won't just be asking, a visitor to the building, do you have a fever today? We'll have the thermometers out and make sure that everybody's safe to come in. Recess is up there. We talk about that. Some folks were worried that, with all the safety protocols, that recess would, be something that wouldn't be able to happen. No, recess can happen. Matter of fact, it gives an outside activity, and outside gives you a chance to spread out. Outside, is as far as transmission, is said to be a safer place to be than inside. But there are some activities, well, and it might be some of the same folks that you were talking about, Mr. Kerr, that don't want to leave that mask on. There are some that participate in what we would call high contact recess activities, and so we have to minimize those and make sure that what they're doing outside is safe. And so some of the more structured things, it might actually be teachers creating the types of activities that the students can do at recess. So there'll be movement activities and the such, and not just free recess, I guess is what I would call it. You can't do everything that you could do before the virus era hit us, and we just have to manage that. And again, right after recess, back to the hand washing and the hand sanitizing so that your hands are as clean as they can possibly be, and the germs are off your hands as you come back in and resume school. Transportation. Transportation will occur, and as long as the health condition stays at the lower levels for Tipp City, we'll do 2 per seat, but there'll be assigned seats because if something happens on the bus, we have to know who is in proximity of a student that may have tested positive. We will have some families sitting together on the bus because then since they are family members, they don't have to social distance as much as folks who aren't family members. And again, students even have to have the face masks on the bus because when they're 2 per seat, they won't be 6 feet apart.
We might also consider preparing for an increase in volume of family drop-offs, and the volume of traffic is already congested. The time change will come and it will be dark.
Yes.
Those are all things to consider because there will be people that opt out of taking the bus.
Right, you're right. And we've already had some of those preliminary conversations with the principals and looking at what we had set up in the past, and is there a better way, to get traffic flow in and out of the buildings. Lunches, we will have lunch schedules. It might be impacted because in between each lunch, we are going to clean the chairs, clean the tables. That takes a little bit of extra time. Some of the cleaning products we have, it's just a spray and then you have to let it air dry. We're talking about a good 5 to 10 minute break in between the lunch periods. And so we'll work that into the schedule. Lunch managers, they had an energized group, and I guess I could say from what I had sitting in that group, it's like, we're up for this challenge, and we want to make sure that the kids get the food that they need at school, and so they were willing to undertake whatever they needed to help. They know that, and I don't know your lunch lines from the past. But if students were able to reach in and make choices and put things on their trays, those types of practices have to be eliminated. And so the cafeteria staff will be packing, the trays and or serving boxes or what have you, and then handing the lunch to the student when they get to the end of the line. I asked what the experience was here with lunches like that, and they said almost definitely hot food items are still part of the menu, and so you can have the expanded lunch options. It doesn't have to just be a cold sandwich and whatever else comes with it because it's being served differently. No, they say the hot menu items are still going to be there. Oh, and if we would get into remote learning, we are going to set up provisions to provide lunch for the families in need. Last year, when you went remote learning, I think it was my understanding that your hub was not at a school site and it was somewhere else. And so we would ask to continue to use that site, but we also open a building or two so that there were multiple places that families could access the food if we were shut down. Another piece about extracurricular activities. Again, we'll monitor OHSAA guidelines and see what's permissible and what's not as things change with the virus. But we have on here just listed what some of the recommendations are for pay to participate fees because that came up in the spring. And so it says if we make it past 50% of the season, then your fees are your fees. If it's anything less than 50% of the season, then there will be some reimbursements to the extracurricular folks. I was so pleased to hear in this task force that the coaches and athletic directors said, if we are going to remote learning and extracurriculars are not able to continue in person, that there would be some online, at least coaching and or guidance or training recommendations or what have you, performance things for things like music, directors and advisors, that they would actually go through as many of the extracurricular activities as you can with the online and actually stay dedicated to the purpose of that extracurricular. And so that was a neat thing. Sometimes suggestions have to be made by administrators and or boards of education, but it was just great to hear the suggestions coming from the advisors and the extracurricular teachers. And so that was a great thing to be involved in. Special education, gifted, and 504 services. Those services, again, by law, have to occur. And the way schools PLP is designed, those services are going to be provided by Tipp City teachers. So in addition to whatever teacher schools PLP puts into the program and the mentor, our POC for students in these areas will be somebody certified in those areas. So they won't just be a POC at that point. They'll actually be carrying out the IEP, carrying out the WEP, carrying out the 504 plan. So they'll be a POC plus because they have actual teaching responsibilities by any of those plans.
Do we know how many of the exceptional needs kids are going on to online versus in classroom?
Not yet. We've still got a week left before the deadline, so we'll just track it all at once when we get to the deadline date of the 16th. That's the last page of our plan. Again,
That was very thorough.
it's
Thank
more,
you so much.
lot more specific than the framework that we presented a couple of weeks ago, and I can't thank the people on the task forces enough. And I'll thank Mr. Veerhoff with everything else we had going on. He's been kind of like the band director, with the task forces. He's keeping the schedules on track and making sure that meetings were spread out enough so that one or both of us could get to as many of them as we possibly could and participate, not to direct the process, but just to be involved in all the task forces because all of these areas are important. I will address, something that came online because it hit a nerve. They said that our plan was rushed and it didn't have specifics. And if you look at implementation or adoption dates on other districts, they're probably 10 days to 2 weeks ago. And so I was not prepared after getting ready to start the 1st of August to just put a plan out there that would have been rushed and not thought out. I wanted to have the task forces, involved in getting actually teachers and support staff and paraprofessionals that are actually living this situation in their different departments and different areas. We wanted them involved in the development of this plan. And so this plan, it may not answer every question, but it is comparable to the plans that were put out by other districts. And we're not finished, but this is how we intend to start if the board's comfortable with it. And then we continue to take input, continue to meet with health departments and government officials from the state and make any enhancements to this that we need to move forward.
So as parents have those questions, should they be reaching out to the principals of buildings for answers? Because that should be their first point of contact for any, because there's going to be tons of things that, this is a great plan. It's not going to cover all of those things, and Joellen pointed out some as well. Should parents look to that specific building? Where should they go for answers?
I think the buildings are going to start sending out more information now as we start to approach the beginning of the school year. I think that the best place for them to send information is still at the info at Tipp City. And if it's a building specific question, we'll forward the question to the principals and say, can you address this one? Can you address that? I know Galen has already answered a couple. Ms. Smith had a couple that came in and she answered those. I think most of them have answered at least one question for us already, but as more and more questions come in, if they utilize info at Tipp City, we'll get them to the right person and we'll get the information back to them.
Is there a way to share this draft plan now? I know that you're looking for us to approve it, but there seems to be, a lot of need to have the details of how is it going to work and what to expect.
Yes.
And how, as one parent may have those questions, other parents may share and benefit from those answers. And is there a way to get that information out there?
Yes,
So it's accessible in our frequently asked questions?
Yep. It'll be on
Even if you don't have the
website.
answer, you could even say, I'm working on the answer to get it ironed out. I know there's some hesitancy to put information out there that is wrong, that then would subsequently be changed. But it seems like, I'm sure the other board members can chime in, we're fielding a lot of questions that seem to be need to be funneled to the district to respond to and to publish an answer.
I agree. Yes, this is going out. If the board doesn't have any major concerns with what we presented tonight, this is going on the website. It'll go as an attachment to this item on the board agenda, so it'll be in multiple places.
So this plan will be available on the district website tomorrow?
Maybe tonight.
Maybe not tonight. And where will it?
Not tonight. Not
It's
tonight.
not just a click, click, click.
Now, this one, I can PDF this and attach it as a to the board docs.
Okay,
And
We do have a couple things that need to clean up.
but where would they be?
Notice that you were taking tonight that we may need to clean up.
Well, I think even when it gets on the website, we can update it and then just replace it, can't we?
yeah, this one was what was presented this evening.
Yes,
So
yeah, it was
I would
presented
like
this
to
evening,
put
goes
this
on
on
the
the board docs.
And where would they be finding this on the website? Front, first page, homepage?
Yes.
right at the top of the news items, right on the front page.
Okay, and then the at info, where the district, I think, needs more clarity where to go for this.
Yeah, that, I agree that it'd be nice if there was just like a big box that says, click this for your questions, and it just pops up the email without having to try to figure it out.
That doesn't really work because it depends on what kind of software you're using. So we can just give the email address.
Yeah, I think.
Can you advertise it better with bigger fonts?
Yeah.
Is there a way to put a big link on the front page?
Scavenger hunt, to try to find things. and-
People aren't gonna click, if you have to click 3 times, you're already disengaged. It should just be right there.
It should be right on the landing
Main
page somewhere.
page.
Yeah,
Go
we put it on the front
responsible
page.
restart, boom.
Yeah, we could put, maybe a title, responsible restart, questions, info at Tipp City, and just put it all right there in the middle of the front page.
Yes.
People would just click on the link should, on our website, does it automatically turn blue or some color?
I have to make
A
it.
link, okay.
And then an info, but I just want to follow up. Thank you so much because I think I read it, before and I thought it was very directional. I started feeling oriented as to what was going on in both online and in classroom. And I know this has just been, we're all getting the emails, we're all reading them, they're all over the map. There's all different types of camps and opinions but I recognize how much day-to-day, minute-to-minute detail you have to put into this. And I really appreciate it, Mr. Verhoff, and I appreciate it, Mr. Stefanik. And I think that, we are moving forward the best we can under the tenuous circumstances that keep presenting. So I think.
And something I heard throughout your presentation is that our staff have demonstrated that we need to have faith in our staff, that they are coming up with the solutions and they are addressing them as these task forces are still continuing to work together. And that we can still continue to supply these questions, and perhaps to follow what you were just saying, if there are ways that the principals at the school level can continue publishing the what to expect. I think that we have families that are hungry for those kind of details as to painting the picture of what school's gonna look like, so that they feel that they and their kids are ready to go back. And is there a way to advertise Wednesday's Zoom meeting about the PLP?
Yes.
How can we further get that information out there, that as a reminder, as a one call?
We'll-
One call, I think is.
We'll stick that out and we'll do a one call, and it'll be the correct one call. Now that we've revised the session, they'll only be hearing from one superintendent. Instead of 2. So we did find all the links to get that corrected.
Do we have a time set for that?
6 o'clock, 6
6
o'clock.
p.m.
Can we announce it now for the viewers?
Yes.
I'd like to have it reinforced.
All right, Wednesday night for all parents and community members who want more information about the 100% online option. Members of Miami County ESC, Montgomery County ESC, and a representative potentially from schools PLP, himself will be conducting a Zoom meeting where they will present information about schools PLP, potentially a demo of the experience that students will have when they go into the schools PLP program. And then we'll have a Q&A session, very similar to the community forum Q&A that Mr. Verhoff and I had about a week ago. That was a request at the community forum. We reached out to the ESC. They are more than happy to provide our parents with additional information.
Great. Thank you.
Hey, real quick, because Liz said that she needed to do a link. So here's just, I know this is hard to see, but just as an example, so we do have the responsible restart task force, but it says questions here. But maybe if that were in red, you know what I mean? It would be a lot easier to see. But because it's black, it's underlined, but it doesn't stand out. Because when you go to this page, there's so much stuff on here. And so the questions, the Q&A is right here, but it's kind of hard to find. So even if that were maybe red or bigger or something, then people would go, oh, click it. Because I know the link is harder to do. This is kind of an easier fix.
And in preparation of Wednesday's meeting, I know most of these questions you said you would be facilitating and sending along to them, but I think there needs to be some preparation on your part to respond as to how students will still be part of the district. And what are those ways that they'll still be connected, not just from the point of contact, but how are they still considered a Tipp City District students?
Yeah, we've answered some of those in an email, but we can do it more in that public forum, and then information can get to more people.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to all your staff.
Yes.
They've done a phenomenal job, and we need to have grace and faith in them. It's an unusual circumstance that you're making up as you're moving us forward.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you.
Are we done with that? Anything else? Anyone for more questions before we move on to new business? Okay, I think we're good. Mr. Stefanik, do you do new business now? I guess you do, right?
I can.
First time. Well, yeah, that's what we. Go ahead.
Okay. In new business, we have a recommendation for approval to employ the following administrators on 2-year contracts for the 2020, 2021 and 2021, 2022 school years, pending proper certification and paperwork. And you met our 2 recommended administrators, Amy Epperson for the assistant high school principal's position, starting tomorrow, if the board acts appropriately. And then Janice Cooper Harrison, assistant middle school principal, and that start date is listed as August 12th.
Should be the 17th.
Yeah, there was
Called and
no communication today with her district, and they asked if she could stay there through the 16th, and so she'll be available on the 17th.
I'll make a motion with those amended start dates.
Motion, can we get a second? Second. Motion and a second by Joellen and Ann. Any discussion?
I did have some questions on the contracts.
Okay.
Without being very specific, is the amount prorated due to the fact that because our August 1st is a normal contract start date?
Well, they'll be working the same number of, they'll still be working 216 days and 226 days. We're going to just extend those days that they work. Instead of being on the 1st of August, they'll start tomorrow for the one and work 216 days, which is a normal contract length. So they were not prorated, but they will be working 216 and 226 days. Sorry, Mark, if I saw your.
That's fine. And then next year, as we.
So they're gonna have like a full summer where they're kind of working all summer as this overlap. I mean,
more of the summer than a typical
before.
10.5 or 11-month contract, yes. And then when we hit August 1st next year, it'll be lined up appropriately with the calendar.
Ready for vote? Any other discussion? Okay, ready for a vote, Dave?
Heatherly,
Yes.
Zakor,
Yes.
Dahl,
yes.
Dunaway,
Yes,
Patrick.
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Let me do it.
No, that's him.
Oh, well, I just.
Oh, okay, well, I'm
I
trying, I didn't know if you introduced it and then I start talking,
No,
or
we
if I just keep
yeah,
talking.
read it.
Item
Yeah, Item
B.
B, approval, yeah.
Okay, item B.
And just as per the agenda, there's no verbiage.
Okay. As per the agenda, approval of the new policies as presented at the June 16th board meeting, this is the second reading.
Can I get a motion?
I'll move.
Moved and
I'll second.
seconded, Dahl and Heatherly. Any discussion? Ready for a vote?
Dahl,
Yes.
Heatherly,
Yes.
Dunaway,
Yes.
Patrick,
Yes.
Zakor.
Yes. Motion carries.
Tuition student. Approval of the following tuition student for the 2020-2021 school year, KH.
I'll make the motion. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Motion and second, Dunaway and Heatherly. Is there any discussion?
I'm a little confused.
I know, it is.
I don't know who KH is, but I guess we're saying initials, we're not gonna say the name,
Sure.
but
I learned today that, or I spoke with Mrs. Carroll today, and she indicated that there's no reason to not use the full name of the student when approving a tuition student.
Okay.
So this is the hopping child.
Yeah, go ahead, Simon.
well, first I'm in favor of this. I think it's a good idea to have that available, especially with the letter that we read last meeting, but I guess I was under the impression that we had voted not to allow people.
Correct.
So now this is, I guess from a procedural standpoint, do we need to change the way we're doing that first and then vote that person in, or?
Yeah, because this doesn't match up our policies that were like that March 1st deadline. Is that what you're talking about, Simon?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but I can tell you what our legal counsel said. Because there was a specific question asked at the last meeting in those comments, because they did ask us to consider this again. So we have to put it out here to consider it because that is what it was asked of us. Even though we already have the policy in place, we've already done this. This is just what our legal counsel suggested that we do.
Because they had legal counsel.
Correct. That's a good way to put it.
But
Correct.
normally we would not do this for parents unless they go and get legal counsel.
I guess that's a good way to put it. Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
definitely. I know it's very confusing. Yeah.
I guess I understood that we should respond to the request. I didn't know that the response was going to be a vote.
Yeah, that's what, I mean, this has obviously never happened before, so I was just going under the direction of
Why is it about? I don't
our legal
understand.
counsel. Well, we don't have to,
Why isn't there just a letter that it was decided, it was voted on such and such a date, and that's.
Because we have a policy that covers it.
yeah, we have a policy that covers it, so.
But that's why I don't understand why Helen would.
I don't
would
either.
advise us.
Excuse me, what do you mean I have a policy that covers it?
Didn't you remember we crafted that policy?
Yes, I do,
for-
and I thought we took the vote for this 2021 school year.
We did.
Under that policy.
Right, and that's why I'm saying that this even further
So
confuses.
why, I guess I am lost, why,
I don't know. either.
So the direction of our legal counsel was because this student also had legal counsel, and the board was specifically asked a question in that formal letter, that this was the proper way to handle it, just to answer the question, and it's transparent and it's public, and then if you see item D, then we're gonna handle this moving forward, so that that Mr. Stefanik can say to people, we have policies in place for that, so this doesn't keep cropping up.
but it's not being answered via a vote, is it? Because I don't know what we would be voting on.
Based on her email to us.
Right,
And it went
right.
to the board members, it indicated that she felt it was appropriate that this, it is my recommendation, you address whether to admit this student as a tuition student for the coming school year next meeting. It does not state that a vote needs to be taken, it just said that we address this.
Oh, okay,
Well, so we have moved and seconded
correct.
to approve them, so.
Well, and I just, since it's a discussion period, I'm feeling, if I recall correctly, was it a total of 5 families requesting
Oh,
tuition?
gosh, I can't remember.
And so I feel like I understand this person has legal counsel, but at the same time, the other families that may not have been able to afford that. And I
It's
just,
an equity.
it's
Right,
a little bit of an
absolutely.
equity issue to
I
me.
understand.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, I totally understand that, and that's why I thought we had that policy so that we could treat everybody fairly and give everybody an equal opportunity, the same equal opportunity.
That's what
And
I
this
wanted
window
us-
has closed.
It's my platform that I ran on, and I feel like because one family has the means to continue.
Well, I think it's a good idea to allow tuition students. I felt that way. I think that her letter was heartbreaking, indicative of a very strange time with COVID-19 as senior. I think that the reasons we decide to do certain things relate to open enrollment to students, I would say are probably a different lens today, at least hopefully for some people. But for me, I think this is a good idea and I would vote to approve it. I think we could benefit from having these people as our students.
So we vote on a policy, just what was it, a couple
Right.
months ago, a
Correct.
majority vote.
Right.
And now, a couple months later, because an attorney's letter is attached to it, we make an exception for this student that we didn't make for the other four or five.
Well, we're not making an exception because we haven't accepted it. We're just, you know,
Well,
we're,
if we do accept it, yes, then to me, that the appearance of that is an exception. Because she was in that same category that was denied several months ago, am I correct? I don't
correct,
know.
right.
And so now, because I just feel like at some point there needs to be, the decision was made and to move forward. And how is that fair to the other students who were in that group as well and were denied?
Right, understood. Well, this particular student went out and sought legal advice.
I know that.
And that, right, and so that, you know, attorney sent to the board, asked the
I know
board,
that.
okay, so that's how,
But I don't see why this is a vote. I'm sorry. I just really am having a struggle because the vote was taken for the 2021 school year.
and we, I mean, we don't have to vote, we can just discuss it.
Well, there's
We have a motion in a
there's
second.
We have a motion
and a
and a
second.
second. I think we do have to vote.
Well,
I think probably the agenda, I mean, hindsight, maybe item D should have come first, have a discussion, and then subsequently
Sure,
would have answered if we need it.
that would be the way to do it, sure, flip flop it, yeah.
Yeah, I
Monday
think
morning
that-
party bus, and that would make
I
no
would say
sense.
the Hawkins, the answer is specific to their student, and they're not concerned about the equity of other students.
Right.
I think that's probably secondary
And I
to
am,
them.
but as a board member,
We, as
I
a board
am.
member, of course, that's important to us about the equity of admitting other students.
Mr. Stefanik, what's your suggestion? How do we handle this?
I think we can do the.
I liked, you know, Nolan's idea of much more party backing, it should have been D than C, or just flip flop it.
I'm not criticizing.
No, I
I'm
get it,
saying-
no. Hey, we're all learning, right? I mean, this is all a learning process. It's constructive criticism is not, you know, it's welcome.
I mean, if you're talking about.
We have a motion in a second out there, but I mean,
Right.
I also felt this was kind of, we've already voted on it, we already have a policy in place.
Right.
You know,
Well, and I guess what I can say to that, I've been involved with boards of education, and some boards are comfortable doing individuals' requests for processes that may contradict board policy. Other boards aren't. And so that's something that this board has to decide. And I think the way I read the email from Helen was that since there was a question and asked at the last meeting in the letter that was read, the board should make an official response to that. That's what was said. Wasn't said whether or not it should be approved or it should be negated. It just said the board has to make a decision on whether they want to make an exception to the tuition policy.
Well, I don't know that I totally agree with that perception of Helen, because I think the only reason she feels like that is because there was a lawyer's statement attached to that. So again, to me, that creates unequitable access to this board that I don't think creates a level playing field for our families and our students. And I feel like this also puts us in another adverse situation where we spent months very publicly working this out, and we created a document to move us forward, and now we're right back into the same situation again. But that's just my opinion.
Well, I think it would, well, like I said, Monday morning quarterbacking or in hindsight, it would have been made more sense for her to suggest maybe putting under discussion, not new business.
Yes.
Right.
I agree.
So, yeah, I mean, that might have made more sense just in looking at this.
And at the last meeting, we did do the research on the British definition of tabling a motion and the American version of tabling a motion. And what they got in there is, my understanding, it was in the British version. There's a way to take something off the table, is what tabling means. And so even though you've got a motion and a second, there could be somebody that says, we need to table this. And in the British version, if there's no action after a time, after you table it, then it ceases to exist. And I didn't read that in the American version, like you table it, and you might have to come back at a later time to take care of it. And so at that point, if you would table this one, you could go to D potentially and take care of that, and then
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
then you could come back to C
C,
and
okay.
determine what your thoughts are.
If we even want to come back to C. All right, I move that we table this item C and move on to the item D discussion. So what do I do now? Okay.
She doesn't need a second on that, does she? Not to table, you do?
Yeah, because if you're making a motion.
Right.
Okay, all right, there you go. Motion and second to table by Mrs. Dahl and Mrs. Zakor. So Mr. Stefanik, we'll move on to item D.
Well, don't we have
We
to
have to
vote?
vote.
Oh, shoot, sorry about that, yeah.
Well, to be certain, you're tabling to revisit it after we take care of the next
Item D,
item on the
correct.
agenda.
No, I'm just gonna table it. If
Oh.
after we have that discussion, somebody wants to revisit it, they can move that.
Oh.
Good
Who was the
clarification.
second on that?
Dahl and Zakor.
Dahl,
Yes.
Zakor,
Yes.
Dunaway,
Yes.
Heatherly?
No.
Patrick?
No.
Okay, motion carries, sorry. Item D, Mr. Stefanik.
Future tuition requests for the 2020-2021 school year. Approval for all future tuition requests for the 2020-21 school year to be addressed by the superintendent. And then there's text there from the email from the attorney.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Motion and second by Heatherly and Patrick. Is there any discussion?
I think the ability to accept tuition students is an important one. I think that it could be addressed by the superintendent rather than the board. It would make sense to me. I'm in favor of that.
That's not what this is saying, right? 'Cause we already have a board policy for how we deal with that. We're not undoing that board policy, are we?
No, this
No.
is just so that the superintendent can inform families of what
The
district policy.
That's
What the
right.
district policy
Rather
is,
than
yeah.
having them get an attorney and come to the board and try to.
Okay.
Whatever that policy may be for that particular
Right.
year.
So are you comfortable with that, Mr. Stefanik, being able to tell people what the policy is and
Explain it to
are
them.
you
Well, yeah.
comfortable in that position?
Well, if that's the directive that I get from the board, then that's what the superintendent does. If the thing is that there are no exceptions to the policy, then as they make the request, I just inform them of the policy, and that's how the process works.
I think we as a board need to consider what's going on as far as our enrollment and look at this as a vehicle in addition to open enrollment. I know that's not what we're talking about here, but as a vehicle to manage our resources. And I know that's not what this is about. This is.
But I think also with that comment, I think tuition students coming from different populations somebody new.
And I think once this goes, we're gonna be streaming again,
All
so.
right.
So if we didn't have COVID, we would have had. to do
We are
one.
back up, everyone.
Want to explain what happened?
Okay.
Want to wait for your.
All right, everyone, I apologize. Let me, one.
Open a little bit of the shades.
Well, that's interesting. Our camera looks like it's not gonna respond. I apologize. We had a lightning strike here, or I'm sorry, thunder and lightning, and the power went out. That happened at 9:37.
But you know what's gonna happen?
We're back on.
Oh, great.
And we just now got the meeting back up, so we're gonna finish.
Okay. Get my mask back on. So, sorry, did you already reconvene and all that?
I just said that we're back on.
Okay, we're on item D.
Yes.
Oops, and my computer just zoom up, okay.
How we're gonna handle
Yes.
approvals of the future. Mr. Stefanik was saying that he can handle explaining the board policy to parents as it stands.
Correct.
And that we're not going to.
Well, he's just, when people call with the question, he's just gonna tell them what our current policies are. It's very simple.
Right.
We've already voted on the policies.
I think the question is, will the board make exceptions?
I don't think
No,
our policy
we've already
allows
decided,
that.
yeah, we've already decided there's no exceptions. We just want Mr. Stefanik to be able to tell people what the current policies are. Mr. Stefanik can't make exceptions. It has to be a board decision. The board already voted on no open enrollment, no tuition.
I move to call the question.
Sure. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
It's just, I'd suggest we just call it vote.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
You, Simon?
We just call a vote.
Are we good? Any further discussion?
So just so that we're on the same page about what we're voting on.
Yeah, please.
We are voting that Mr. Stefanik, I don't even know why we have to vote on this. Why do we have to vote that Mr. Stefanik
Just
is
so
gonna explain
that,
the
so that
board
if any
policy?
parents come to the board and say, we want to discuss open enrollment in, or tuition in the board meeting, the board has already said that they're not going to hear any more.
Well, they can always make a public comment about that though, can't they?
Sure. Oh,
Yeah, but we're not gonna do what we did last time and have, it was supposed to be a presentation, and it was put on the board agenda for discussion. And it didn't happen that way because it ended up being turned into a
COVID and
COVID, I'm not
people
sure,
under
but
10.
we don't want to allow people to try to put something on the agenda, that topic on the agenda. And this is just to forward them over to Mr. Stefanik, and he will inform them of the policy.
And we're not
We
gonna
currently
add them to agendas.
Correct.
Okay.
That goes to the whole equity thing and all of those issues. Are we ready for a vote? Does anybody else have any comment? Okay, we're ready for a vote, Dave.
Heatherly,
No.
Patrick,
No.
Dunaway. I'm sorry, Dahl,
Yes.
Dunaway,
Yes,
Zakor.
Yes.
motion carries. Okay, Dave, is issue miscellaneous? Any policy first read?
Yeah, I can do that. We have a policy attached. This is the first of two reads for the following proposed new district policy. This is going to be policy 8450.01 for facial coverings during epidemic events. This policy was provided to us from Neola. And so Mr. Stefanik, Mr. Bierhoff, and myself, we went through and prepared the policy based on Tipp's usage, which is what you had before you here. Actually, I believe, yeah, this is a new one. So this is a new policy for the district.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions about this policy?
My only comment to Mr. Stefanik, which he answered during the presentation, is
how are we going to address extracurricular activities and the requirement of mask? And so I guess my question at this point is, should we add that type of statement to this policy? Any school-related function will require people to wear masks. Or are there exceptions?
I think the governor.
Well, yeah, because if we add it and the governor takes the mandate away, then our policy would require it, right?
I don't really
So-
understand this. Why we're having a policy on masks?
During
Do
the
we have a
pandemic.
policy on social 3 feet of distancing? I mean, I guess I'm kind of like,
It's just been advised that we have a policy on mask usage.
but then that policy this is a very fluid situation, so.
I believe that there is a section in this policy that allows this to be determined by the superintendent. Where is that, Mark?
Yeah, I'm reading it
Yeah,
real quick.
it's the big paragraph on the first page, third paragraph down. It just says that, you know, again, it would be one of those situations where in consultation with the local health department, instead of having it, you know, come and be a board action, that as in consultation with the health department, the superintendent would make the call that it would be a mass mandated time because of a pandemic or an epidemic.
Yeah, this currently doesn't say anything about having to use it because of, oh wait, talks about government edicts. In the very first paragraph. The superintendent will issue periodic guidance through Board of Education plans in alignment with public health officials and or in accordance with government edicts, but it gives the superintendent the ability to activate this policy or not.
So I guess that means if Miami County has a situation where the governor has relaxed the masks for schools from K through 12, but Miami County has an isolated situation and the health department recommends that we wear masks, this gives the authority to the superintendent to use that information and put this policy in effect. Is that what the understanding is?
Yes.
That's how I'm reading it.
Yes.
So we don't have to have a special meeting of the board every time. It's just already, a policy is already in place. And we're trusting Mr. Stefanik to work with the Miami County Health Department and invoke this as needed.
Yes. And it would be, it would be more timely. So if
Right.
it shows up at the first of the month and you just had a board meeting, you know, a week ago.
It's $625 for us to have a special meeting and talk about this.
Right, right.
So,
And then that's what they would say, that we talked to them about hotspots, hotspot counties, hotspots within hotspot county, you know, those types of conversations. And so if the governor said, hey, the rest of Ohio is looking good and Miami County isn't, you know, then we would say, okay, there's not a state mandate, but for safety reasons, we need to stay with this. And then we would just put that into place.
Then who has the authority to undo the mask policy? Would that also be the superintendent?
It would be the, you know, the guidance of the health department. If the health department says numbers are trending down, the major danger is gone, then we would say, okay, it's over.
you're gonna be doing a lot of one call this year. Mask on, mask off, mask on. Right?
You're gonna be good, right?
Just like the karate.
Oh, that's right.
We need to have like a Krispy Kreme donut sign when the lights on, mask
Yeah,
on.
I love that. That is fantastic. But yeah, mask on, mask off.
I think this also cuts down some of the recommended and how people sometimes have read into, well, it's recommended, so I don't have to. This gives the authority to you and our blessing to you to use the advice of our local county health department to decide when we should be wearing masks.
Right.
We're
Because
trusting you, Mr. Stefanik.
this is to protect everyone, but our staff need to have the assurance that they'll be protected.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's just like part of the dress code.
It says that, yeah, it says that at the bottom.
But there's really not guidelines on here, are there, as to when that mask thing is lifted?
Well, that's up to Mr. Stefanik, that's up to Mr.
No, it's
Stefanik and the
not,
Buckingham Health
well,
Department.
it basically says, you know, during times of elevated communicable disease, community spread. And so that would be the recommendation of the health department, and the health department would recommend, hey, I think our elevated status is gone, and then the superintendent would take it down.
I know, I'm just playing a little devil's advocate because elevated communicable disease community spread could be H flu.
This may be the new reality.
I would suspect that the superintendent values his job more than that to put it in during the flu. I would suspect that it's going to be in line with the public health officials' recommendations. If for some reason we have some novel flu or whatever else that causes this type of epidemic or pandemic, then that would change it. But I would suspect if we're just talking about the flu, that the public health officials aren't going to be coming to the school districts messing with it. It's just going to be the flu. Right now, we're dealing with the novel COVID-19 virus, and this is providing him the ability to provide periodic guidance based on what the public health officials are saying or in accordance with government edicts. So when I read that, periodic guidance means the guidance is right now, the public health officials in accordance with the government edict is that K-12 has to wear the mask. And then when that goes away, he would give us the guidance that we take it away.
My personal thoughts, I'd rather leave those decisions in the hands of the board. And I'm just concerned about, we've already put the mask in the restart plan, reopen plan, because that's the current climate right now from the state. And when that climate changes, then make one call, call one, whatever, and announce that. I'm just leery of voice policies and.
Well, but just to restate what you just said, I think what you just said matches up with this policy. You could, because you said it's in the restart plan because of the government, mandate. And so when the government takes it down, then we could take it out of the plan.
Well, not necessarily, because prior to that, excuse me, I'm so sorry, but the governor said it was a recommendation for masks. Now we're at a requirement for masks.
Right.
Right. So that restores the control at a local level.
So the recommendation from the governor may continue, and I'm not, I'm just using this as an analogy, may be the requirement from the superintendent.
Yes.
Well, and
what if I feel as a board member, the majority of our public doesn't want that requirement, and then I lose my voice, and that's all I'm saying.
okay, well, and what I would say about when a superintendent would make that requirement, it's based on the information that we received that even from legal counsel that says if you're getting recommendations from health professionals, it would behoove you to follow those recommendations and don't make a distinction between required and recommended. When the health professionals are saying it's highly recommended, you're not health professionals, so you should put it into action for the safety of your school district. And that's the recommendation that's coming from school boards attorneys that advise whole state associations for administrators and superintendents. So that's where my recommendation came from on the grades 4 to 14 was folks are making recommendations, and the only reason we didn't do 4 to 12.
Yeah.
So I was in the days out for the pandemic, 14 days, 3 to 12. The reason we did 4 to 12 is because I didn't know how you do it with second graders walking around a building with no masks and third graders with masks. So we just bumped it up one age level because they said the primary students might have the roughest time with the mask. So again, this policy, at least not with this superintendent, it doesn't make the decision on one person. It's one person working with the health professionals and legal counsel on things, but it says you don't have to come back to the board every time you say yes, no, because you might not be able to do it in a timely manner. You might not be able to pull it off in a timely manner. And so that's the recommendation from the OLA.
I want the discretion to be left with him, not us. He's going to consult with he's making this recommendation that we follow this policy based on how do we protect our staff.
And students.
Well, of course it's students, but when you leave the word recommended, that leaves the discretion to the parent and then the student if they want to wear the mask or not. Whereas him following this direction and the recommendation of the county, public health, it gives him the authority to do that.
I understand that, Joe.
Right.
Any further discussion on the new policy
And
first
it's a
read?
first read.
Right,
So.
Right.
You got time to sleep on it for a couple more weeks.
until the 24th,
Yes.
2 weeks from tonight.
That could be something different before.
Sure, it might be different.
Well,
No, I think if it's required, it gives Mark the ability to change it, or yes or no. All right.
So we're good with that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, upcoming meetings. The next regular Board of Education meeting will take place on Monday, August 24th at the Board of Education office beginning at 6 p.m. The meeting will be streamed remotely on YouTube. And the next work session meeting will take place on Tuesday, September 22nd, 2020 at the Board of Education office, also beginning at 6 p.m. Motion to adjourn?
I move.
Second.
Motion and seconded by Dahl and Zakor.
Dahl,
Yes.
Zakor,
Yes.
Dunaway,
Yes.
Heatherly,
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Motion carries.
For staying tonight, everybody have a safe trip home.
Yes.
Okay, don't blow away.
Yes, big time.
I need to see if my car will start.
Oh, wait, if I see you start out of your car.
My wife's van
Do you know
died.
what happened? My
Don't
car died
stop.
last night,
That's
2
it.
hours
Just
on,
call the police.
up here on Main Street.
Before anybody leaves, real quick.
Oh,